Okay, I think we're on.
That wasn't being muted.
Okay, all right, I think we're good. So I'm going to bring this meeting to order. We have Newton and Bob and Jeremy and Steve and Ed and Jill and myself here. And then Amanda, do you want to say, although you're gray and fuzzy?
Am I? Oh, I am. Okay. I don't know why. Huh. Okay, let me, so Amanda via Zoom, I guess I'm the consistent Zoom attendee.
That's okay. That's okay. All right, cool.
Christine is absent.
She's gonna be late.
Okay.
She was finishing hosting a soccer team dinner. So I'll keep an eye out for her because she wasn't sure whether or not she was coming
Any
in
other
person
People
or.
online.
Hmm?
Any people online, we should know.
Yes.
Like Nick or Christine.
No, Nikki and Christine are both not here, so. No, it's just some people from the public in Georgia. So, okay, so I thought that, let's see, well, we could do, why don't we do minutes first? And so we have the minutes from the water meeting. Newton just gave some typo kind of corrections, nothing substantive.
No.
Did anybody else have any other changes or anything like that? Okay, well, I appreciate the tag teaming to get the minutes done, just because I didn't want to have anything hanging over our heads to just do it, so. All right, so I guess I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Okay, so, all right, so.
Yes.
Newton
Yes. 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 Yes.
And Amanda?
Yes.
I'm a yes too. All right, so so we have a few things we want to get through tonight. It is mainly going over the rest of the Q&A. However, I've decided that it was excessively painful to read it. I was putting myself to sleep. And we've added about 10 more pages to it. So what I thought we would do, because some of our answers actually say to watch the meeting tonight to get the answer. So I thought maybe we would leave the discussion about that till the end, and maybe it makes sense to go through what we've learned in the few presentations that we get ready to discuss. Does that make sense to people? We'll do the Q&A after. Okay, so we're gonna try to be fancy and share a screen. So what do we think? Well, maybe we'll have, so kind of just looking at the list of what we all kind of have researched over time. Maybe we'll do all the kind of the cost things that Steve and Ed and Bob and everybody have worked on first. We'll do that. And then I was gonna wait to do traffic to Christine was able to log in. And then we'll go through the rest. Does that sound okay? All right, so I am going to try to not screw this up. And let's see. Yeah. Good. All right. You can
Okay,
just
so-
wink at me when you want me to change your slide.
Yeah, that's good. So, so if you remember when we met with the Dale municipal ballot group that is in opposition to the article, the special town meeting regarding the new elementary school. Towards the end of that meeting, I actually asked them about their views on, how do we move forward? What are their, what do they see as the options studied? And what were the issues that they had with what was done to date? And what did they want to see happen? And so Jerry Potts, he did send us, after that meeting, he sent us what he thought were the flawed assumptions in the options that were studied by the SBC and his proposed preferred options that that were not studied. So you have, you know, before we kind of go through this, is I think it's important to understand that we're sort of going back in time here. The article is a vote on what's at WheeLock. It's not really what I'm gonna walk through now, but we did ask the Dale folks for this, you know, information, and they spent a lot of time putting it together, put a video together. He had a Word document, and he had email follow-up, and a video sort of explaining his views and what options he would propose. So, so the options that were studied by the SBC, this is just the existing Dale site now. I guess you can go to the next one. So this was what they call option E1, and this was the new construction option. As you can see, it left the existing Dale building in place, except it did demo like the 1962 wing and the modular over there. And the new construction was sort of joined up closer to the memorial school. And so, you know, that's, it took over, it took over the, you know, the baseball field there. There's a lot of the fields that were there. You know, students, you know, stayed at the Dale Street School while all this was going on. There was a slight, you know, there was some disruption from the cafeteria demolition, and some modules were sort of, some phasing was set up to deal with that. And then, so there was, you know, when you looked at this particular option, sort of the downsides where it took over that field, there was $500,000 to replace that field. And then there was some phasing costs included, you know, in that analysis. So the Dale people, they want to do new construction, but with a different setup. So when you go through all the materials that were sent to us and their proposal, they want to assume that Blake and Wheelock are used for swing space, and that they demolished all of the Dale existing building. They pointed to an MSBA analysis that was done in 2016 for excess capacity for an existing grade levels at Blake and Wheelock, as you know, I guess they're evidence of why there was excess capacity and they could use that space. They claim this proposal uses fewer modulars. It allows for sharing of the gym, the cafeteria, the auditorium. We talked about they're going to demolish Dale. They're gonna move the new construction where Dale is. So where you see that yellow building, it's just sliding down to cover up where Dale is now. That's their proposal.
Trying to show it with my mouse. It'd be
Huh?
fancy. I'm trying to show it with my mouse.
Oh,
It'd be
okay.
fancy.
And so they do that because they want to save that $500,000 baseball field that's there.
So it's the same building.
Same building, they're just moving it, they're demolishing Dale and they're moving that building down to cover the Dale building where it is now. And put in that, and that opens up that field space, you know. And they also claim that this option reduces overall costs and expedites the timeline for completion of the new school, and it reduces disruption. So that was, if you go to the next one, so this was the ad reno option. And this one is, you know, so as you can see, the ad part, the yellow part, is takes up a big piece of what that field is. So they lose one of the fields. There were two fields that lose one of them. The students, they stay at Dale during the construction. That's the assumption of what was done by the SBC. This is option B1, okay? And it takes about 3 years to sort of complete everything. There's modules involved, a small amount of modulars, but they're basically, most of the time, we're not working on parts of that Dale building. The students are there. They move into that top yellow piece gets constructed first. When that's done, they sort of move into that and out of Dale, then more work gets done on Dale, and then they move back. It sort of just takes like 3 years to do it all. Now, the Dale at Dale proposal said that, again, they're proposing that you use Blake and Wheelock for the swing space. And they claim that this expedites the timeline in the period of which students are in the existing Dale building for the ad reno. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's the same scenario as a new construction. They just vacate the site during new construction and use swing space is what they're proposing. They also pointed to, they want to redesign. They didn't like this particular yellow design. They think that an architect could maybe, do it differently somehow. I'm not an architect, so I don't know. But they also claim that there was 6,000 excess square feet in this particular option. And basically, we could talk about that. That basically, my understanding after talking to Mike Quinlan is that there's not 6,000 extra square feet. So there's that extra usable square feet. There is, because of the way that existing Dale structure is, it's not efficient when you start to renovate it. So you don't get, like, if you took new construction, you could efficiently get really good space in classrooms. There's a problem with the existing.
It's not foot for foot replacement.
Yes. So they sort of lose some of the square footage when they renovate it.
So 1940 square feet is not equivalent to.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
So that's kind of.
Amanda, did you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So do these three options have essentially the same student capacity, which contemplates the anticipated growth that has been put before us?
Yes, they're all the options that the new construction and the ad reno you see here are based upon the design enrollment of 575 students.
Okay.
All the options that were studied at the PSR phase had the 575 design enrollment. They all had the same educational programming, so they all had the same square footage, that was needed to meet the educational program. So.
Okay, and then when we talk about shared space and shared resources, Dale with Memorial, is that analogous to Dale and Wheelock just based on age and grade differentials? Do we know that?
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
So that's just kind of some background on sort of, what was done by the SBC, what was studied, what the Dale folks, are kind of, what the issues they have with what was studied, and then what their proposal is.
So let me finish
So,
a second.
yeah.
In the context of the meeting, and what I see in verbiage around town is The contention is that these are viable options, which if explored, would have been a better solution than that which was proposed, because
Right.
what the Wheelock selection compared to a flawed Dale proposal led to the decision for the Wheelock site. And so the proposal to demolish Dale and go through which you're going through is the option that, if developed, will come to a conclusion that is favorable to Wheelock.
Right.
But it's never been developed, so I mean.
Well, so let me answer that.
Good.
So basically, there, in the, before the PSR phase, there was a PD called the PDP phase. And where they looked at all the sites in town, and they sort of, looked at a lot more options that ended up in the PSR. Some of those options were to demolish the Dale building. Now, they never made it to the next phase, the PSR phase. They were dismissed early. So there was never any cost or design. There was no preliminary schematic design done of those options, because they were sort of looked at and dismissed early in the PDP phase. Okay, does that answer your question?
Well,
But so what I'm going to walk you through, though, is I've tried to put some analysis around costs, including the Dale option, so you can compare it all. Okay.
right, but when you just, maybe you will, I'm sure you'll probably address this, but when we say that the demolished Dale option was dismissed, okay, it was in a broader context of,
According to Mike Quinlan, it was dismissed because there was a desire to retain the Dale building, and it was very costly to set up, to deal with the modular side of Dale.
and disruption of students was
And disruption,
also
yeah,
a
yeah.
criteria.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just trying to say that it wasn't just like, let's find a reason not to
Right,
use Dale.
right,
I mean,
right.
it was.
No, there was.
And as it evolved, as we know, the option of the fast Park and Rec, although it's not in that purview, in a total town consideration, is not an option. So I mean, just saying there are a
Yeah.
number of criteria.
Yeah, I think when you walk through all this, hopefully at the end, you'll understand sort of, we're trying to pull it all together in sort of one picture,
I don't want to.
so that you can kind of see it in one big picture. There's just things that we have to go through to get there, that's all. So, so the next slide is, oops, I guess that's the title slide. So go
Just
ahead.
the title slide.
Yeah. So swing space, we want to talk about swing space, because that's a big, when you look at what Dale presented and sort of their proposal, they're heavily, they rely on swing space to make all their proposals work. And so if you remember, I think you were there, Bob. I don't know if any of you other, I was actually at the June forum. I think it was before I joined the committee. I actually went to it.
Yeah, you were there.
This question came up on temporary swing space during construction. And the question was, during construction, could the Dale students be temporarily housed at the Wheelock School and the Blake Middle School during the 2 to 3 year period that it would take to replace and renovate the Dale Street building? And so, there was an analysis done at that time and presented by Dr. Marston to, there was, I don't know, maybe over 100 people that were either online or present at that meeting. And so, you can go to the next slide. So basically, the school department put this analysis together where they looked at the projected enrollment for the 2023-2024 school year based on NESDAQ projections. they looked at existing classrooms, existing enrollment numbers. And you'll see here, this is the Dale Street at the top. And what they need, and then the Wheelock School, what's currently at the Wheelock School today. So that's, and if you go to the next slide, this is just the Wheelock School. So it takes the existing second and third graders, says how many classrooms they're occupying. The top yellow circle is the existing classrooms. That actually ties to Jerry's 2016 MSBA analysis. There's 28 existing classrooms there. And so grade 4, which is the proposal, is to move grade 4 to Wheelock. And grade 5 would go to Blake. So this is just dealing with Wheelock. So the grade 4 one is taking, if you move them, you need 9 classrooms. Okay. So it's kind of just math, you take, and then the specialty classrooms for grades 2 to 3 are 8, right? So that's 28, right? For the, that 28 that the second and third graders are using. You need 9 more for grade 4. That's a total of 37 classrooms. So you're 9 short.
So the school is maxed out at 28 classrooms.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what this analysis says, right? And so the next slide kind of does a similar analysis for Blake, where it takes existing 6 through 8 grades, what classrooms are currently occupied, including specialty classrooms, compares that to the grade 5 requirement. Now, on both these schools, I forgot to mention, the 9 short at Wheelock doesn't include specials for that grade 4. Neither does this. This is there's 9 short here, and it doesn't. You can see the note, it says it does not include specials. So I'd be honest, I came away a little puzzled, because I actually sat through that meeting. I listened to Dr. Marsden. I went back, I looked at this analysis. I scratched my head, quite honestly, to understand why isn't that, what's wrong with this analysis, basically? Is there something missing that I'm not getting? Because there seems to be some disagreement between the Dale folks and the SBC. So what, now when I went and listened to the video of what Jerry did, I listened to it 2 or 3 times, and I actually wrote down what he said about this analysis. He said, Superintendent Marsden gave a presentation at the public forum. I still don't understand what he was saying because it didn't address anything. We had no opportunity to ask questions or reframe it to the case we were actually making. And then he sort of just dismisses it in his video. Doesn't say why, so I can't deal with that. I don't know why it's not good enough for his purpose. So I said, I've been doing a lot of auditing for over my 40-year career. I said, well, let's see, maybe there's something here that because we have this analysis on our website as a public document. So I said, well, maybe there's something here that I'm missing. I said, so we went to go visit Mike LaFrancesca. Ed came with me, and we asked him about the analysis. He took us through it, and and then as I sort of stepped after that, I took a step back and I said, well, if I had to do this, this is kind of how I would do it. I don't know. You guys can make up your own judgment about it, but and then we, just in case there was something we were still missing, Ed and I went on a tour. We actually went to all 3 schools. We spent 3 hours, We saw the basement of Dale.
You went to the basement?
The scary basement?
I went in that basement once,
Yeah.
and it was several years ago. I'm just gonna age it. Yeah, no, thank you.
So we went on a tour of Dale, and we went to Wheelock, and we ended up at Blake, and we spent time. This was during the school day. We went all over. We looked at boilers, we went to classroom, it was very educational for me, I had just been to some of these buildings as a parent years ago, so. But anyway, Ed, you can talk for yourself, but, I came away, I mean, there was no space there, at least from my perspective. All the classrooms were full.
At all three schools.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I mean, the classrooms were full. We walked into classrooms, we walked by classrooms, we looked in them. There was some conference rooms that were sort of empty. But that's, I'm just assuming people weren't using them, but I didn't see, space that would accommodate, this type of request. So, so anyway, that, I think that's, I concluded that in order to do what Jerry wants to do, you need modules. Because at least from my perspective, you guys can look at it and decide it for yourself. That I think you need modulars to do what he's suggesting. And I think, to be fair to Jerry, I think he might have known that modules would be needed, but I think he maybe thought that there was no need, that he could have used more swing space. I don't know what went through his mind, because he didn't really say what was wrong with this analysis. But so, we, Ed and I, we also took a tour around the outside of the school, thinking that, well, if modules were going to be needed, kind of where would they go? Just to understand, like, how would this work? We were there, it was easy to do, so it sounded like maybe at Wheelock, they'd be put like where the new, the proposal was to put the new school kind of in that field right behind Wheelock. It makes sense that they would go there with space available. It's flat. Blake, there's some debate about where they would go, because there's not as much space available over there. So the next question was sort of, well, if we have to use modules, what would the cost be? And what we did is we sort of I went back to Jerry's analysis. He doesn't have any. He points out costs that he could eliminate with his proposal, but they're costs of the other proposals. So they're like the ad reno proposal or the new construction E1 proposal of costs that could be sort of eliminated. They're like the phasing costs, or the baseball field, things like that. So I asked the school department and the SBC to request from Arrow Street an analysis of what the cost of modules would be. I said, well, may as well see if they can do that fairly quickly and easily, right? How many modules do you need to accommodate the educational program and all that stuff? And so this was what they sent us for a sample layout of what one grade might look like. So you have restrooms up the top, corridors, some spaces for specials. And if you count the classrooms, there's 9 classrooms there, right? So there is an admin office and nurse space, and then all the specials are in there. So it's like 24 modules, when you count it all up. And then you can see that this is just one grade. you'd need two of these, right? One at Blake and one at Wheelock. It's just a sample at this point, but I wanted to just get an idea, so. And then there would be site costs, this is important, there's site costs at each location, so. Because you have to, you can't just put a modular anywhere, there's prep work that has to be done to get the site ready. Plumbing, water, electricity, all that stuff. And there has to be ramps and stuff. I think we can go to the next one. And then this was the assumptions that they used to come up with their modular estimate. So they came up with, they said the site work is required at each site, paving, grading, utilities, all the water, power, telecommunications, fire alarm. 9 core classrooms, plus an additional classroom for specials. The Dale students could share. They assumed that Dale students could share the Blake, Wheelock cafeteria and gyms, or they would go without for 3 years. So Amanda, I think your question was like, so the assumption is in this cost estimate that they could share it, or if that's not possible, that they would go without. But there's no cost in here to rebuild a gym or a cafeteria. Okay, and then there's so they came up with 20 to 25 modulars at each location based on that blueprint you just saw. And that would be the core classrooms, the admin space, and some type of enclosed walkway. And then after construction, there would have to be site work to restore those existing spaces back to the way they were. So this is the estimate that they came up with. They used Triumph, which is, I guess my understanding is and we have the detail if anyone wants to see it. I can share this with.
You're nodding like me because you used to try.
So
Yeah.
you know Triumph, okay.
They're the player.
Okay.
So, well, maybe you can tell us if these numbers are good. So Triumph modular costs, and then the site work came from Arrow Street. And as you can see, there's a range here. So, it gets expensive, right? There's, a low range of 5.7 million up to 8.5. So for purposes of my analysis that I did, I used the low end of this range, the 5.7 million. And you could, I guess we can go to the next one. So this,
Oh, it's just a tennis line.
yeah. So what I'm gonna walk you through now, it's a bit detailed, but you have the slides there, I think. But basically, what I did is I took each of these options that Dale folks had sort of proposed and ran them through sort of the same cost model that the PSRs ones used, just using similar data points that was there. So you could see, and this is the new construction one that we talked about. In the up top there, I'm deducting out, I'm starting with a $48 million new construction cost number that comes from the E1 option, right? I figured, well, if they're just going to move that building down, that cost should be a good starting point. So I backed out the some of the costs that were in there that Jerry had pointed out weren't needed under his proposal. The demolishing of the 62 modular, the abatement for that piece, and then phasing costs. And that's because I add back later, right after that, the full cost of abating and demoing Dale. So that's a $1.8 million cost. So I'm just backing out what was in that proposal and then adding back the 1.8. And then, the general conditions and overhead, that was a number that's already came from the E1 option. And then you add in the modular costs, right? I'm using the low end of that range. And then the all the the percentage add-ons that get added, the 5 and the 20%. And so anyway, you come up with a $80 million number. Now, some of the cost of the demolition of Dale, according to Mike Quinlan, would be eligible for reimbursement. He provided me with an estimate of $300,000 for the reimbursement. I guess not all asbestos abatement is reimbursable. And so that, you know, that brings it down to a project cost of Medfield of $62 million. Okay. We'll go to the next slide. So this is the ad reno option that Dale folks talked about. Again, a similar analysis, except in the ad reno option, you know, we deduct the phasing cost. We also deduct there was some temporary modulars in there, $1 million of temporary modulars. So I take those out. There were 10 of them, and then I added back the 5.7 of the new cost of modulars under their proposal. And, you know, the rest is kind of just math. I didn't change the MSBA number here. It's higher for both, you know, for ad reno. So I just left it at the higher number. That's sort of my attempt to price out what was proposed by the Dale folks. And then the next slide sort of just compares them all, right? So this basically just, now these are all PSR type 2020 cost numbers, right? So we're dealing in sort of that time frame. So the orange one is Wheelock. You can see, you're probably very familiar with these numbers. These are PSR, so they've changed. They've gone up in the final schematic design numbers, but at the PSR phase, these were the Wheelock numbers. For the Dale site ad reno options, remember there were two. There's one that the SBC did. That's the first blue one. The second one is the Dale at Dale one. And then the new construction is, again, there's two of those, the PSR and then the Dale at Dale. I've added into that there's a few footnotes on the Wheelock site. I've added back the cost of the field to that of 951, and the full cost of and then there's just a footnote noting that there's 2.1 million included in that Wheelock line related to the upgrade of the existing Wheelock parking lot. You know, that's sort of considered something the town has to do anyway, regardless of where the school goes. Okay, and so yeah, that's so this slide kind of, you could see, you know, the cheapest option was already looked at by the SBC. Option E1, which is new construction. Option E1, new construction. That's the 50, the net to Medfield 54. But obviously, at that time, they knew that. They knew it was cheaper, but they decided to still, you know, choose the Wheelock site. So, but the Dale at Dale numbers you can see are much higher, by 4 million in one case, and then a lot higher in the other case for the new construction. Because when you add in the modular cost and the cost of demoing, you know, that's like almost $8 million, you know, difference there.
And Steve, the 54.6 versus the 60.3, that's the 2.1 for the Wheelock parking lot and the $900,000 for the pipe that has to come in from the sewer and the traffic abatement. Those are the $5-6 million that.
Yes.
Spoken to.
Yeah, that's the,
Consistently.
yeah, that's the stuff you've heard about quite a
Right.
bit.
Right.
The difference in sort of the the traffic, the water main piped up there, and then the field,
The new
the
field.
field is in there, because that's 951, so, those are the primary differences. So that, does everybody follow that so far? I mean, so the next step was sort of, dealing, huh?
Which slide do you want it on? I'm sorry.
No, I guess we can go to the next
Okay.
slide. Sort of talking
Next
about,
headline.
so Park and Rec sort of complicates the analysis, right? So we said, and Sharon helped me with this on the townwide master plan. These are things right out of the master plan that was done not too long ago. On that.
Everything in the blue circle are just direct snips from volume 2 of the master plan.
Volume 2 of the master plan. So these are, it talks about the need for a rec center, how the fast center is inadequate. It has the priority of capital expenditures of where you would want to, it's got the new Dale School, number 1, Old Dale School reuse, Park and Rec building, water treatment plant, and state hospital reuse. Those are all in there, okay? So, so that's what this is. It's really just sort of pulling out what's in the master plan related to sort of Park and Rec, the whole Park and Rec item.
So the townwide master plan, just for my clarification, in March of 2020, identified construction of the new Dale School and use of the old Dale School.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty much what that is. And then in the 5-year capital plan does have a cost in it for a new Park and Rec building. So there's $1 million for feasibility study and 15 million for building. It's like $16 million in the 5-year capital plan. So this, what we did here is we sort of took all the options and we sort of we tried to get apples to apples, okay, is what we're trying to do on this slide. The top box there is, you've already seen that from the previous slide. It's the PSR cost and reimbursement cost of Medfield from all those options that we just showed you. The next one is if you remember that there's 2.1 million in the Elm campus option, the Wheelock campus. That's included there for a cost of the town that needs to be dealt with. We just had a big water meeting yesterday talking about those conditions up there and what needs to be done. And then, so we put that cost across all the options. Okay, we said if it's in the last one, we just said, well, let's add it for everybody. And then you come down to the subtotal. The box in the next big box is Park and Rec related building needs. And you can see there's black boxes for different options, and that's because if the Dale building stays, there's a different analysis of Park and Rec's potential use of that versus if it gets demolished, or if it's used as a school, right? So there's like, if it's used as a school, like in the ad reno options, you see both those options. We added in the full cost of the 16 million for both the SBC option and the Dale option. If it's used as a school, we still have this cost to do something with Park and Rec, and that's 16 million. Now, and that's same for the Dale option for new construction. They're demolishing that building. So there's still a cost to put Park and Rec someplace, right? So the two options that don't demolish the building, we have put in the full cost that's in the capital plan. It's sort of broken down into two pieces. One is what's been deferred from the capital plan through, next year. So these are things that the town has sort of put off dealing with Dale. Because they knew we were undergoing this new elementary school proposal. And so that's $3 million. And then the maintenance cost for all the other types of repairs is $8 million. So that includes like the roof, the upgrade of the electrical, help me out here. The portico. I mean, it's basically
The
everything.
asbestos removal, like,
Yeah,
those are all the
asbestos
great big
removal.
numbers.
It's everything, and we
Yeah.
have that detail, if you need to see it, but
It's
basically,
also up on our website.
it's on our website, so you can tie these numbers out, So that's what we did here, is sort of looking at, if you want to do something with Park and Rec, apples to apples, I think this is a good analysis. Now, if you don't want to do anything with Park and Rec, which is possible, then the cost is the demolition cost for Dale, which is $1.9 million. Right, so if you say, well, I don't want to deal with the Park and Rec, issue of putting Park and Rec in Dale. Well, you still have to do something with that, and the cost is 1.9 to demolish it, so you could, just take that subtotal and add 1.9 to all the options, I guess, if you want to. But, so that's sort of what I did, I just tried to do an apples to apples comparison.
And I wanted to point out, so there's two different numbers in the capital plan, because depending on where you look in the, like the Dale auction, when you go into the big capital plan, it has all of the numbers for everything, and then it adds up to this $11 million line. A lot of people mentioned that it actually costs 18 million. So the difference between the 11 and the 18 is that there's an inflation factor on the bottom that takes the total from a year and puts this inflation factor. So, even though this is 11, I know that some people in their heads, when they looked at it before, said it was 18. It's the same thing. There's just an inflation factor based on what you do with it. There is no inflation factor put on the other pieces of the capital plan where this building was. So to get more apples to apples, we just went with, this was the base costs for both, and didn't try to put inflation on one and not on the other, because.
So the next slide, this slide, there's some people ask, well, you were dealing with the PSR numbers, what's the final WELOC, analysis? And it's not fair to compare this with the PSR numbers, because there's a lot of changes that happened from the PSR. They added the geothermal HVAC system, they changed the square footage of the building between PSR and schematic design. There's a whole year of cost increases from inflation on construction. They did some deducts through value engineering changes, and then the MSBA rate changed. So this is just, we just put this here because this is what people are going to vote on, right? So we thought it needed to be there.
Is the deferred maintenance cost from the capital plan, did it say how it was funded?
So it doesn't say how it's funded. However, anything that has to do with the buildings is supposed to go through the municipal stabilization fund. So the way that it kind of works from a capital budget perspective is that there's $1 million put into that plan every single year without an additional override. Because when we started this, I guess it's been in existence 2 or 3 years now, there was an override that was agreed to fund it, and that stays in place. The only way it goes away is if the selectmen choose to not keep it up. So the way the plan works is that $1 million goes in, and that $1 million can also be raised by Proposition 2.5 every year, and that's a decision the selectmen made. And so since it's been in existence, it's stated the 1 million plus the 2.5 that they can increase it by. And so Amy Colleran and Michael Francesca are kind of like the keepers of the municipal stabilization fund spreadsheet when they come to the capital budget meetings. And so the capital budget is kind of split into two pieces. One are things like the vehicles and the things that don't have to do with buildings, and that we just created last year, the capital stabilization fund, that doesn't have a specific funding source. Municipal buildings does have this funding source.
So this could be covered.
It could be covered
over a
in that.
number of years, right? If you're-
Yeah.
That's basically,
Yeah,
yes.
and the other thing I forgot to mention is that there was this, if you remember from the Park and Rec meeting, there was this question about the Park and Rec move in day one, and what would that cost be, right? And so I know some of you know the answer to this, but just so everybody knows, so that they checked with the inspector.
They checked with the building inspector, so I actually think, Amanda, you actually emailed with the building inspector after the meeting, right?
Yes, I did. It will still be considered educational purposes.
Right.
Right, and so, because when they had come to the meeting, the architects that are working on the current feasibility study for Park and Rec had assumed that it would change to a business use. So they have to immediately do things to change that, like immediately change the fire suppression system and a bunch of other things. And so it was gonna really juggle some of those pieces into that, because inside of this $11 million number isn't fire suppression system, it's just, maybe you're gonna have to do some of those sooner rather than later. And in reality, if you go to the backup doc that they actually gave to the permanent building committee before the meeting, the number that the architect actually suggested was incredibly low, that Tim and Mike were like, that's kind of crazy. There's no way we would do that. And so they increased it to the 2 million and had a conversation with them, kind of like, no, these are all the things that we have in capital plan that add up to 11, to get a sense from them if the things that were in the 2 million that they were stating at that meeting were different, or if they were in here already.
Yeah.
And because the use isn't gonna change, the reality is that Park and Rec could just move in there today with no change. It's going from use to use. Is that the right thing to do? That's gonna be kind of like the town and the capital budget committee, and then everything that comes out of the capital budget committee for how that municipal stabilization fund will be spent is voted on at town meeting every year. So everyone's gonna kind of have a say into
But you'd have
Could
to
you go back to
allocate
that slide?
which
what
one.
you can, right,
Okay,
all of it
so-
to Parks and Rec. To get them in, just to catch up on deferred maintenance.
I would say we
Do
probably
something.
wouldn't, we probably would do it in pieces, like we've been doing it, because you
Yeah,
don't
there's
want
no-
to rob Peter to pay
You
Paul.
you have the
Yeah.
luxury of deciding when you do this stuff.
Yeah.
Right,
I-
So, I mean, but.
And the maintenance, the 2024 through 2029 could just stay on that schedule.
It could,
as
yeah.
the
Yeah.
fund gets
Yeah,
replenished.
yeah.
Like, there's a couple of really big expensive things inside of that capital plan. There's like $2.4 million for a roof.
For roof.
But like,
Yes.
all of the schools need a roof, like, I think if you add up all the roofs, it's like $15 million or something like that. It's
Yeah.
a really big number.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different ways that they can pay for the roofs. The schools can go through an MSBA process, the town can't. And so when those things come up, that's when there's gonna be discussions about some items might have to be like a debt service. But rather than people's taxes going up because of that debt service, the debt service could get paid by the fund.
Perfect.
And I neglected to mention a couple things when I went through this. I just remembered them. So in the Dale proposal, they made some assumptions about how that if you did their swing space analysis, that you could save time and it would be, it would go quicker. And when I did my due diligence, I talked to Mike Quinlan. He says that for new construction, it takes at least 2 years. You can't shortcut new construction. And any of the options that have been studied, it's at least a 2-year period for new construction. And that for the demolition of Dale, maybe this is where Jerry thought he could save some time. That according to Mike, that's a 9 to 12 month process.
Demolition alone.
The abatement.
No, because you have to abate as you.
Excuse me, abatement and demolition is 9 to 12 months. And the abatement's, I think, the big piece of that. That's what takes the time. Depending on the type of asbestos, there's certain procedures and protocols that have to be followed. You probably know this much better than I do, Jeremy, but those, like so, and, Dr. Marston did point out to us a lot of the areas that had asbestos when we went through that building. There's quite a few, so, some of them are not to scare anybody, but some, like the floor tiles, like my understanding is that they're not at risk unless you start to break them up, right? So as you demolish, that has to be dealt with.
Trying to walk lightly over that area.
Yeah.
You go, Steve, I'll check that.
So I
Did
just
you
want,
feel like he took you on Gilligan's Island's 3-hour tour?
I haven't, in all my years in Medfield, I haven't been beyond the gym.
Oh, that's funny.
So when you go beyond the gym, and you can believe it was built in 1940.
When you run the craft fair
There's
over
like all
there, when
these
your kids are in
signatures
4th and
behind
5th
the
grade and they
stage of
keep
like
the
where
craft
everybody
supplies
signed
in the
their names.
basement.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, and then
Yeah.
the very last slide. I mean,
Oh, sure, yeah.
because I think so one of the questions that has been asked is, okay, so what's the cost to operate Dale? And if you leave Dale, what does that cost, right? And I know this slide's hard to see, but if you got a printout of it, it basically, and then, so what the school, what the Mike Lock and Cheska did is actually part of the PSR submission on page 245 of PSR. There is a schedule, evidently they're required to do this by the MSBA. So you can see in column 2018-19 is the facilities cost of $165,000. That's the pre-COVID period. So that's a good year to look at. The building was in full operation at that point. And then, those are facility costs. So I think the other thing is the question that people ask is, what's the cost for a new building, to operate a new building? And that's what they've done in this analysis. So the white part, just to the right of the 18-19 column, is the post-construction budget, assuming full design enrollment. Okay, so this is like it's operating as designed as a school, with all the kids in it, right? So those numbers probably aren't really applicable to day one, right? I mean, you wouldn't. The plan is not to have full enrollment day one. So
What option is that represent? Is that the,
It's the actual proposal for Elm Street.
oh, okay,
Right.
yeah, this is the new building on Elm Street,
okay.
right? The Wheelock location. And so you can see like there's costs in here. They're higher, right? You would expect it's a bigger building, there's more space. There's cost in here to maintain systems. The systems are they're new, they're more sophisticated. There's maintenance contracts that you need to have in place. And so there's a $200,000 increase in the facility cost. Now that would be there no matter where the school is built, right? It's just if you big, any of these options, no matter where you build it, it's gonna cost more, right? So it's $200,000 more. And then the other piece is, because it's a bigger building, you're required to have another janitor or custodian. And so there's one additional $60,000 cost for an additional custodian. So those are the pieces of kind of what all the costs. We tried to pull it all together in one place, deal with a bunch of different issues, park and rec, and the different questions that came from Dale and their options. We go back to the comparative slide there. Yeah.
This one.
So you can see here, if you try to solve the park and rec problem, the cost is, the Dale options are not, you look at the, based on my analysis, they're not the cheapest. And what I took away from this is that what was studied by the SBC were the best options. I mean, I don't know how you could look at this any other way. That there was, so I'm not sure I would agree that there's something big that they missed. You know what I'm saying?
No, I think it's a great analysis. I think one of the comments to make is, we've gone back and forth on what the purpose of these meetings are, right? And they are to do exactly what you did, which is to take the information and the facts and analyze it and try to move from opinion to fact. And I think you've done a great job, frankly. And I think each one of us have to reach our conclusion.
You all have to decide.
Right,
What do you
exactly.
think of this
We,
analysis?
like every voter in town,
Yeah.
needs to make that decision. So I think
Right.
that, but this is,
You at least have the benefit of my thinking. so.
well, we have the benefit of your analysis.
Yeah.
You have a benefit of your analysis. And I think that was when we started this back in August. That was the purpose of this. It wasn't to have a town meeting. It wasn't to have a public forum, because there are public forums. But the purpose of it was to say, when I say the committee, I mean the Warrant Committee, has to make a determination on the article. And as we found out through, I don't know, I was trying to figure out, we have about 16 meetings, I think.
I don't know, we've had a lot.
In terms of going through the facts and addressing the question. So if we hadn't done it the way, if we haven't done it the way we are doing it, I don't know how I could have made a decision at the end, because there are so many factors out there. So like this analysis, one can argue, this, that, or the other, but I think the two things that I think you show is, one is, it's not a simple solution. And the second one is that these considerations have been taken into account in the process that we've all been evaluating. Whether you would come to the same conclusion, that's why we vote.
And everybody can.
That's why people
decide
vote,
that for themselves.
okay? But I think that from my perspective, it's a great analysis, and one could argue, left to right, and I think that the other piece that you bring on, with the Park and Rec building is, as a Warrant Committee member, I don't think I have the option to dismiss the Park and Rec. I think it's part of what the town is, it's in our budget, and we have to look at, or I think I in my position, have to consider what is the future of Park and Rec?
Yeah,
One may argue that the school building committee doesn't have the authority. They're not taking authority, they're making a consideration. But I'm telling you, if they hadn't, I would have raised with them.
yeah.
So I think it's a very valid.
Yeah, I think, there's a whole process for dealing with that building, which we all learned, right? At the
Right.
Park and Rec meeting, and it's gonna eventually require another town meeting, and sort of, there'll be a study group form probably to look at it, and but the other thing I just want, this is just analysis of cost. There's a lot of other considerations
Right.
that people care about, and they can weigh those the way they want to,
Exactly, sure.
This is, I just looked at cost here. So, and one thing we haven't talked about is the non-cost issues associated with sort of those pictures of modulars that we talked about, and any potential disruption that would cause that those schools, Blake and
Sure, and we have context for that, because we
Yeah.
had the meetings with the teachers, and we asked about the
Yeah.
disruption to
Yeah.
the students of moving fourth graders to one place and fifth graders to another.
right,
What's the impact on the second and third graders when the fourth graders show up?
right. So anyway,
I don't know, but everybody needs to make their own determination. I don't
Yeah,
think it's
Right.
it's a great analysis.
and I
Thank you very
think,
much.
you know, Sharon's pulled together another analysis on,
Yeah, do we want
You
to
want-
talk
you
about
want-
traffic? Or
talk
we'll
about,
still talk about mine.
is there any more questions on this? or-
No,
just
thank you
wanted
for
to
doing this. It's
Echo
great.
Bob's thought that it was the right approach for the Warrant Committee through you, Steve, and Ed and others, Sharon, to take a holistic view of the investment opportunities or decisions facing the town, including Park and Rec, even though it's not part of the SBC analysis, as you point out. It was, it puts to rest questions about what, in a sense, it puts to rest, or at least addresses what's going to happen with Dale Street after a new school is built, and how does, and what if Park and Rec goes into it, using the data that we know has been estimated, at least as of this date. You cite that, PBCC, whatever their acronym is, will look at it more in depth. These numbers will get refined. The maintenance issues will become into better focus, I suppose, and timeframes will be adjusted to all these numbers, but it puts everything on one piece of paper. And I think that's a good thing.
And the
I mean, maybe it'll bring some clarity to me.
Yes.
That's just a one clarifying question on the operating costs.
Yeah.
The delta, you're saying that is an additional $200,000. Is that inclusive of also keeping the existing Dale Street
Yes,
operated?
No, well, so if Park and Rec was in Dale, currently Dale costs $160,000 to run.
Okay.
So if we assumed that the Park and Rec went into Dale, that would be at that $160,000 cost
Okay.
would still exist.
That would
Correct.
still exist.
Right.
Okay, so that
And-
200,000
Right, but no,
just for the.
It's
So that's
incremental on
just
top, so actually you have to do 160
yes,
plus
the
200.
200 is incremental.
For the school building.
For the new building.
For the new building.
It's incremental to the existing school budget to operate Dale, the school.
So the 50,
So
the 58,000-ish
So they-
square
the-
feet
the-
of
So
Dale
they're in
versus the
addition to that,
95.
depending on the
So they,
use
in other
of
words,
Old
I'll put
Dale
it this
in the
way,
future,
the
there's a
cost for the
as
new
well.
building is 360.
Correct. That's right.
So the cost for Dale today as a school is 165. That's,
But that-
that's a 200.
But that's not the cost of
37,000
running Park and
square
Rec.
feet.
Right. That's
Right.
No, and
No,
I think,
it's-
I think we heard they had like 100,000, I think I
I thought it was
remember.
24, oh.
You know,
Oh,
But
for the
Dale
square
At the
Street-
back, at the
Oh, I
back.
don't know,
The
yeah.
one that Kevin gagged on,
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's less.
but there's something, yeah.
It would be less, because go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I want to say it was somewhere around like 50,000. Maybe a
What-
little bit less than that, like costs all in, right?
You could scratch out of the ones that to come up with.
Yeah.
True number. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So will this document be posted on our website for the public to get the benefit of? Or is this?
I was
our
gonna
internal
suggest that,
document?
and
It's up
so
to-
we can either talk about that now, or we can talk about it after. I actually think that presentation and this one, plus the Q&A are all things that we should talk about putting up on the website. But why don't we do this one first, and then we'll have that discussion? Because then we can do a motion to do those things. Okay, so, what I have kind of worked to put together is, it's a combination of traffic mitigation, sidewalks, and busing. Basically, everything that you could possibly have to do with how people get to the school and what are the effects on that. So I've tried to wrap that all into this, and a lot of this actually comes from the conversation that we had with Dale at Dale, and Steve Ganem actually had talked a lot about the safety, in particular, he lives on the corner of Cross and Phillip. And a lot of what he kind of like asked us to look at was the safety of that area, and wanted to look at that area, and then I had suggested too that we should look at both so we could really compare. So that's the genesis of what this was. So the kinds of things that have been questions that this is trying to address is what are the traffic mitigation strategies that are proposed? What is actually in that budget, and what isn't, because there seems to be some confusion on that, at least from the different things that I've been hearing. The next question is, what about the sidewalks in Medfield? Kind of what's the state of the sidewalks? Can the students walk to downtown? Can they walk to school? And what kind of density is there in the surrounding areas of both the Dale and the Wheelock area? And can you get to school on a sidewalk? And then the last piece is how much kind of more is the road going to be used? What's the traffic going to be used in terms of cars and buses and things like that? So what I did was I started with, this is from the traffic mitigation presentation that the SBC did. And this in the orange block is the current kind of proposal. So they have a budget in the schematic design right now of $300,000. The $300,000 is an allowance to be able to get these things done. If they only did this, my understanding is that it's unlikely they would actually use the whole 300,000. If they did this and decided it wasn't enough and they needed to maybe put a street light in, they're not gonna have enough with the 300,000. But there is that, it's a 5% contingency, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a 5% contingency built in for things like this, that they could dip into the contingency for that. So in the red box are the top 6 concerns that were from that presentation and kind of what they addressed and what they didn't address. And so the number 1 concern was that intersection at South and Elm, which is inside of this circle over here. And from what I understand, and this was actually something that I kind of learned a lot from this, is that how much of a cut through south to Knollwood to Cross and then to Phillip that has become. It's like the little Medfield Highway, I guess, if you live in Norfolk, if you want to call it that, if you want to get out.
Just like West Street.
I'm gonna get there. Yes, I live on one of those. I thought I lived on the only one in town. This is educational. I'm not the only one with a highway in front. And I'm not the only one that probably wants to sue their realtor for saying they sold you a house on a quiet country road. So, but I digress. So the plan right now in this with the $300,000 is 3-way stop at that intersection. It's already a wide street from there to Wheelock. So it's really hard to see, but in that top corner, they already have some wide shoulders. So they're not talking about widening the road. They're just talking about repainting it so that it has some turning lanes because there's already some space there. There is new crosswalks, and there are improvements to the sidewalks to make them accessible at those intersections. So it's not new sidewalks, they are improvements to the accessibility of them. And then there would also be do not enter signs at Knollwood Cross and Stephen, which actually would be interesting to see how Waze picks that up and stops those people or not. But I don't, be an interesting experiment to see how long it takes Waze to realize that.
So, yeah, it's the school hours.
Yeah, just for the school hours, right, exactly. So that is the plan. The things that they did not address is from the top 6 concerns. Number 6, the lack of sidewalks on Cross and Phillip. And as I say, there's a town decision that needs to be made on that, and I'll get to that a little bit later. And then there's also the historic bridge that is just to the east of Elm that was also not in this analysis. There's no intention to do anything about that bridge. And then the number 6 is about what would happen if all of the times overlapped with the high school and the middle school and here. And there is currently no overlap between the high school and the middle school with this. So kind of in my research, and this is actually a brand new thing. So this goes back to what Jill and Christine were talking about with a survey that was done. And the analysis literally just came out last Thursday, I think that is, the 7th. And so what this document is there's now this rapid recovery program that exists in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and it was really to help towns figure out how to get revitalized from COVID and what are the suggestions that you can do. And so when this kind of landed in my email box, I happened to be riding in a car in traffic for about 5 hours, so I read it, a lot of it on my phone. But I will say it's fascinating, and it's actually a really impressive document. And what it did was it took this survey that was done and it turned it into these real life, what are your real life problems in town? And then what is their suggestion to address it? And then what is a best practice example of how to fix it? Did you?
A survey of businesses,
It
correct?
was,
Not residents per se.
it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
And so I actually had asked Sarah who exactly got them and how, because I was curious. So she actually sent me an email, and I'll just paraphrase it, but basically, so the business survey was hand delivered downtown to the businesses by Sarah. So I think she said she was gonna take a walk. And so she went and gave them, so she passed them out on Wednesday, March 17th. In the morning, she said some people were closed, and so she left flyers in their mailboxes. And she did that for all of the multi-tenant buildings on North Street and North Meadows Road. She said she also left a whole bunch of flyers about it in mailboxes. Then there was a link posted on the town website. She emailed it to everybody that she had in her contacts, and Memo also sent it out to all of their members. She had about 100 copies of the flyer kind of with her at all times to just pass out to people. And she's thinking about a quarter of the downtown business owners actually turned the survey back in. And then there was a user survey. So that was for the community. And so it basically asked the same questions. And so it was put up on a website, and I think that they used the same thing on the flyers to get community members to do that and pass it around. And so that was what happened last March. And so this is all done by Barry Dunn was one of the main consultants in this. When you go, it lists a whole bunch of different consultants, and they use a different bunch of different sources. So I think the plan comes up with about 5 suggestions of what the town should look at doing. And I will say, and it's one of the suggestions, the best practice was actually in Natick. That had to do with, it had to do with the roads, and I read it and I was like, oh, Jeremy, getting some props from the state of Massachusetts. So, but what I found really interesting is that the sidewalks and the safety in downtown were a recurring thing. And really what it was talking about was, once people get to downtown, their first thing was people aren't sure where to go. So there's a suggestion to do all this wayfinding signage so people can get around. There was a lot of comments about people wanting safer crosswalks to being able to get across 109. A lot of it had to do with the actual sidewalks themselves. And there's actually a lot of comments about bringing the utilities underground. And so those were their big things. And there was actually also a very interesting recurring thing that everybody wants an ice cream parlor. So that's right. So these boxes are actually just quotes from that document, pointing out how much sidewalks had come up in it. And then the other resource that I used was from the master plan. And again, this is volume 2, which was issued in March. In particular, chapter 5 of that really has to do with infrastructure and the improvements in the roads. And there's a lot of interesting data in there, in particular about the roads and the safety of certain intersections. And it's got accident counts. It's got a ton of information. I happen to have one intersection on one side of me and one intersection on the other side of me. I'm not surprised about that either. And so inside of that, there was this statement about the school buses and the fact that at the time anyway that this was done, they were being parked up, or I guess they still are, they're up at the state hospital, and that they need to find a solution for that. But in in this middle statement here, it says, that there really needs to be more accessible, safe walking routes to school. And a lot of this has to do with sidewalks, and then it does say, many parents mentioned that sidewalks, really to make it more accessible and safe. They also would like a late bus, I think that's always a topic. And then there was also some notes about the infrastructure improvements that are needed, again, wanting to put a sidewalk plan in place, and so that's kind of where I'm gonna go next, because Mo Goulet has started to try to work on that sidewalk plan. And then the last note is just that, and Sarah mentioned this actually at the water meeting, is that it's important to note that whatever plan moves forward, the planning board is gonna need to be involved with that. They're going to have a separate engineer review this, and so it's going to get a peer review done, and the peer review not only is gonna look at traffic, it's gonna look at the stormwater that we talked about the other night, and it's also gonna look at things like landscaping and lighting. I mean, it looks at everything.
In this rapid recovery, is it anticipated that the state is gonna be funding some of this, or?
Well, so, the plan is actually really interesting. They actually tell you what grants are available and how to apply for them, which is why I found it's like about 125 page document, and I think it gives you maybe the top 5 or 6 ideas to do. And so it says, here's an idea, here's an example of a town that does it really well, and it gives pictures and exactly how they did it. And by the way, here's the list of the grants that are available, and here's the application.
It's really well done.
Based
Yeah.
upon driving
It's very
through
well
Westwood, it looks
Yeah.
like they have caught on to it.
I mean, it's really
Well,
like,
I wonder
if
how
you
Westwood's
don't,
up- Is that why how Westwood's repaved the whole town?
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
putting
New
sidewalks
sidewalks
in
all
and.
over the place.
it's,
Yeah.
I mean,
Crosswalks.
it's really a
Yeah,
handbook
streets
Hard
and
to
to
stuff.
this is
Yeah.
how you can do it, and this is how you can get the money.
I think it's also really important as a town, because with like the new infrastructure bill that just came in, there's a lot of money that's gonna be coming
And
from
that
the
was-
federal, the state. And like, if
Right.
we kind of highlight where our issues were, and like have the proper plan in place, we could be, we should apply for some of these grants to get
Who would
state.
be responsible
funding.
for applying that? Would it be Maurice?
I think it's gonna be, I think it honestly is probably a combination of Sarah and Maurice and them all sitting down and looking at all these things and deciding which ones they wanna go for.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole table in there about all of the different money that is available from the federal government, from the state and everything, and which ones apply to which. So technically, I think that it's written so well, Ed, that you could just do that.
Do we have anyone, is there anyone in town that's
We just
dedicated
have to
to
see Sarah
tracking all these
budget.
grants?
Well, you know,
I actually think Sarah does a lot of it. We could ask Christina and Nick if they were here,
Potential
but
grants, and they probably pay for themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, I
a
do,
lot of Places have grant writers.
Yeah, which we
Or
don't
hire
have
a
that.
grant writer, Hire someone.
I definitely know we don't have that, but yeah,
They
yeah.
Pay for themselves.
Okay, so the sidewalk, so the master plan had suggested we get a sidewalk plan, so this is the current draft that Mo is working on, and what they have done is they've gone around town, they've drawn in where all the sidewalks are, and they've coded them green, yellow, and red. So if it's a green sidewalk, it's totally handicap accessible, it's in good condition. If it is yellow, it's kind of mezza. Some parts are okay, some parts aren't. Red is, there's a sidewalk there, but I hope you don't,
Good luck.
yeah. Basically, yes. It probably doesn't have curbing, it's not handicap accessible, it's probably falling apart.
Probably breaking up, yeah.
So it's probably a little bit more,
It's
just,
road level.
No, don't
Right.
ride your bike. on.
yeah, exactly. So,
Travel at your own risk.
and so he's working on this, and it actually came up recently in one of the last capital budget meetings, because they had he had entered in a number for a request this year for sidewalks, but it was a really small amount of money. And it was really just to bring up the conversation. So when we eventually get to budgets, we'll talk more about sidewalks, but just to get some perspective, on the left here, a concrete sidewalk that's 4 to 5 feet wide with granite curbing. This is actually a picture of Metacomet Street. That's the most recent new sidewalk that was put in. That is currently pricing through the contractor that the town uses between $325,000 to $375,000 per mile. The sidewalk on the right side is an example of what exists at a portion on Main Street. And that's an asphalt sidewalk, 4 to 5 feet wide with asphalt curbing. That is cheaper to do, $150,000 to $200,000 per mile. And those costs assume that a contractor's doing the entire thing. I had talked to Mo a little bit about like, what exactly did Metacom Street cost? And he goes, well, Metacom Street was cheaper because he had his guys do it.
And what?
He had the DPW guys did most of the work. So there is, I mean, clearly there's opportunity cost lost to that because they're not doing something else.
Yeah.
But we also didn't have to pay the contractor to do it. And so the point of this is that sidewalks are not cheap by any stretch of the imagination, and the town needs to come up with a plan. I will say in the last capital budget meeting, or I think it was that, I think we were there, Jimmy. I think Mike Marcucci had said something about like, maybe we need a sidewalk stabilization fund, and I was like, oh, talk to the hand, But the whole point is that you have to have a plan. They're really expensive. One of the biggest ones that gets talked about and is in those documents that I just talked about is North Street. And so, a lot of people say you drive through Westwood, the sidewalks are beautiful, everybody put the utilities underground. Well, they've been getting quotes for us to be able to do that. And the quotes range anywhere from $1.5 million to over $2 million to do that. Because it's not just putting the sidewalk in, it's moving the utility pole, it's doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not cheap. There are grants that they're seeing if we can get. So, I mean, I don't think that this is gonna come up immediately. I mean, it's a lot of money.
How does Mo prioritize, like, what sidewalk is gonna get done first? Is he kind of does he have a list of like the ones that are most traveled on and should be top priority, or?
I
Or
do
is
think
this-
that that's part of how he does it. And so like, I actually had asked him that, and he had actually given me, he has a priority list for his pavement plan. So, full disclosure, I live on the corner of West and Harding, and my road just got done.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. But I'll be honest, I kind of wish he left it crappy, because then not everybody would want to use it as the middle tile.
We can go faster now.
Yeah, and
Dangerous for kids.
there's, right. And so the number one priority was West. And I'm like, really? Okay. So it is, and it's nice. But that costs a lot of money. So like, we had started putting in this pavement program in the capital budget last year. And so his pavement program actually has different prices for the different streets in the priority order. So
Mhm.
like, this year it was the portion of West that's basically West Mill to Harding. Next year, his priority is the other side of West. And then I think the year after that. Oh, geez, I'm not trying to talk to you, watch. And I feel like the next one maybe has to do with North Meadows Road. I'd have to look at it, but he actually, so I do have that document, because it's this living, breathing thing for him. And so I think that a lot of that has to do with the usage of the roads and the density, which actually a lot of those numbers are inside of that master plan, because they have counts done at different times for roads that are highly used. So before we get into the sidewalks, I wanted to explain, I refer on the next slides to these things called safety streets. And so safety streets in Medfield are something that is kind of decided on by, it's joint between the police department and the school department. And these are the streets that they have designated as the quote unquote, I guess, most unsafe streets in town. And it's because some of these have sidewalks, some of these don't. It really has to do with probably like the amount of traffic on them. And so what it says is streets, and then some of them, either all of the street or just a portion of the street. And then because the school is using this, if you live on one of the streets where it's Xed off that it says RHS, it's a right-hand side pickup. So if you live on West Street, your child has to get on directly in front of your house. They cannot even cross to get to the bus.
Oh, because it's not safe on the other side.
It's not safe to even get across,
Or
so.
cross.
Oh, okay.
Right, and, I'll just use myself an example, I live on the turn, so it's like a blind turn, so these things could be because there's a blind turn and nobody would be able to see you, it could be because it's highly traveled, it could be because it's narrow. There's a variety of reasons as to why they would have chosen that, so there's right-hand side pickups. And then there is stop at every house, so if you have to stop at every house on the street, the kids are at least allowed to walk across the street. And then there are certain streets that only the minibus and the half bus are allowed to go down. And a lot of that has to do with, as an example, so on Elm 36 plus and on Phillip Street, Foundry to Elm, and on Frary, it always has to be the minibus. And it's interesting because my kids way over on West rode the minibus all the years. It's this bus that drives, it only fits about 12 kids. It picks up kids that live in like crazy off places that you have to go over these little bridges. You either have to go under, so I think that part of the issue on Prairie is that there's that overpass that's low. So it needs to go through the minibus. It looks like the bus that came from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Because it's not,
So I got a question, what's a half bus?
it's a little bit bigger, I think, than the minibus.
Right.
Okay.
They do
Little
look
smaller
different.
minibus.
Like literally the minibus looks like somebody
a
like,
minivan or something?
no, it looks like somebody took a bus and shrunk it. Like it really looks like Honey, I
Mini
Shrunk the
bus.
Kids. It looks like a tiny mini bus. The half bus, just looks a little bit different. I should have got the pictures for you. So, then there is 2 roads that, are not travelable. No buses can go on them at all. So if you lived on that street, you're basically walking your kid to the closest street, I think, to be able to get on. So the only 2 that are like that, so Cottage Street, the hill between Adams and Prairie, that's the hill that I think is right by Basil's.
Oh, yeah,
Crosses the tracks.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
As you see on my next analysis, there's actually a current child in
I mean,
elementary
you
school that
just
lives
look
on
at
that.
this and it's, it makes sense, right? It's,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so this has been in existence for a long time. I questioned the date in the corner, that July 14th. And so that is the last time that the police department felt the need to add another street to the list. And so they just use this upstairs to be able to do that. So with that in mind, so this is a zoomed in version of Mo's map. And my red circles there are the kind of the areas that in theory you should be able to walk to the school, but there are no sidewalks there to be able to help you. So here, if you can see, there's a this is the current Wheelock School, which is right here. And so across from there, you've got some green sidewalks, and you can actually, if you can see, they actually have sidewalks on both sides of the street.
Yeah.
Because he's actually put the sidewalks either on one or the other. So on Elm, this sidewalk's only on one side. But up, when you get up to Grace Drive and that whole neighborhood has them on both sides of the street. South only has them on one, and then even outside of the circle, but you can see like on Homestead, they've got a sidewalk on both sides, but one side is bad and one side it's metza. So what I have put on here are a couple of things. So when we talk about the safety streets in this area, so inside of this area, there are 3 safety streets inside of this red block that do not have any sidewalks at all. So Phillip is a safety street. It has no sidewalks. What I also was able to do,
Cross as well.
yes, but Cross is not a safety street, was it? I don't think it
Should,
is.
I think it, well.
Was it?
should
Did I miss
okay,
that?
Maybe it's not.
It's
But
not
Elm-
actually
Elm-
listed
part
as a
of Elm
safety
doesn't
street.
have, Like the other part.
Right,
The
so-
East side of Elm doesn't. have.
Yeah, Cross is actually not a safety street. It doesn't have a sidewalk, but these are just the safety streets. And so the numbers that are actually next to it is that I was able to get from the school department the amount of families that live on these streets. And so these are elementary school families. So there are 5 families that live on Phillip Street that do not have a sidewalk. And Phillip Street is a safety street from Foundry to Elm, and the minibus can only go down that street. Foundry Street itself is also a safety street. There are currently no elementary school families on that street. And then Elm Street, number 36 and above is a safety street. I'm gonna assume that that's where the sidewalk ends and that the minibus is there. So there's 1 family there. There are,
And that's sort of make, these lots are very big.
they're
lots.
big, yeah. So those little
So there are a
gray,
lot of-
the little gray dots are people's homes. Yeah, it's not very congested as compared to even, well, because if you look on the left side over on Spring Street, like you can tell, it's just, it's more congested. You can see that neighborhood between Curve and Spring, it's more congested than over here.
Yeah.
There is 1 safety street that has a partial sidewalk, and that's Spring Street, because you can see, and this is Route 27. There's a section that does not have a sidewalk. And then South Street is actually also a safety street, and there are 32 students that live on that, but they do have a sidewalk.
Is Curve Street a safety street?
It is not.
Okay.
And so the next part of this, which is on the bottom, is we looked at, there's been a lot of housing units that have gone up in the last 10 years, as we all know. They put in the plan in order to be able to deal with all the affordable housing. There's been a lot of housing units added to town. And so what I did was I said, okay, within 1.5 miles of Wheelock, how many housing units have been added, and would you be able to get there on a sidewalk? So within 1.5 miles of the Wheelock area, there's only 16 units of housing that have been put in, and you can get to Wheelock on a sidewalk. Those units are actually on North Street. Just past the center of town if you're coming from.
Oh, there's
Wheelock.
actually, yeah.
They're right
Yeah.
behind us, yeah, where we are. So that's where those are. And then I noted here the commuting thoroughfare issue where Norfolk residents are, as we were saying, they're coming up South Millwood Cross, Phillip, and getting out to 109 by Levels. And so, and then the last thing is that they're inside of the master plan, it lists the most problematic intersections in town. The one that is inside of this picture here, that's on that list is the famous South and 27.
Yeah.
And we could debate for days as to whether or not there should be a traffic light there.
Yeah, they studied that a while ago.
They did, yeah, they studied it and then it got voted down at town meeting. Yeah, so that's Wheelock. Now, the Dale and Memorial area did the same thing. So in the Dale and Memorial area, up in the left is where really the majority of the sidewalks don't exist. So the sidewalk on Adams Street ends at Memorial, and the sidewalk on North Street, in order to get to that area, ends at Wheelwright. And on the other side of the street, it ends at Winter. So West Adams, West Mill, Harding, that entire area, there are no sidewalks at all.
This was,
And so the
this
safety streets that are in this area is West Street. There are 21 families there. Most of that is actually on the other side of 27 because
That's
The park.
Park. Yeah.
Probably about 80% of that 21 is from that bus stop, I would say. And then the other safety street is Adams Street, but it's only the section of Adams Street that goes between West and West Mill. So it's this connector here. There's currently 5 families that live there. Over here on Bridge Street, there's 5 families that live there. Now Cottage Street between Adams and Frary, that is this, there's a tiny piece of Cottage, that is, as I said, that's the hill that goes down next to Basil's. There's no sidewalk on that, and there's one family that lives there. Up Harding Street, that's a safety street. There is 16 there, and then Pine Street 67 plus is, there's, and that's house number 67 higher. There's 13 families that live there. And all of those streets don't have any sidewalks. The safety streets that have some partial sidewalks is Frary, that the minibus has to go on. So Frary actually has one of the streets in town that has all three colors. It's got a corner that's red, a piece that's green that's in front of Basil's. There's yellow at the intersection, and then there's pieces that doesn't have sidewalk.
And the Pine Street, you're not including the streets off of Pine.
No, just because Pine is the one that is the
Right,
safety
but
street.
There's a lot of
Cul-de-sac.
cul-de-sacs.
Mhm.
families
And
that are off of that.
this analysis does not include the new developments that are going at the Legion and the corner.
I actually included them
But you have
inside. I
that,
do include
okay.
them in the numbers. So there are
Yeah,
no
I
safety
know.
streets that don't have any sidewalks. Every safety street,
So it's 164 units.
the 164 units
Legion.
assumes the Legion is finished. That is
How
correct.
many units there? 80?
Hold on, I can tell you.
54.
And does it also include the corner of 27?
It does. So,
That-
so the housing units that are included in this in the last 10 years are the park, Country Estates on Hospital Road, but those are actually not included in this because they're more than a mile and a half. Because, but that's just one that went up. 67 North and 71 North, those actually appear on both because those are the ones that are within both. Then there's Hillside Village at 80 North Meadows. That is not in the Wheelock number, only in the Dale number. That's over here, like this corner here. That's where the Hillside Village is. Then Medfield Meadows, which isn't finished yet, is inside this number. And it's gonna be called the Aura at Medfield, the one over at the Legion. So I didn't, those units are included in here, but they are not finished yet.
Yeah.
But all of those units are non-age restricted. The two places that we have that are senior restricted are much older than 10 years. It's Tilden Village and the Village at Medfield are the only two that are senior restricted. The other ones don't have restriction.
The ones up at Hospital Road aren't restricted.
They are not.
No, I think they're yeah.
There's 49 units up there and they are non-age restricted.
Sunset Avenue. I will never live on Sunset Avenue.
That's funny. So then the thoroughfare for those that ever want to come and hang out at my house in the morning is everybody coming up from Millis and Medway. They get off at 109 at Dover Road. They go straight here. They go across west,
Street, yeah.
past my house, and then they go
Yeah,
up north because they're going up to Needham.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going north to Needham and up to 128 or whatever.
There's a lot going on Pine Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of people going up on too. Yeah,
What a
that's,
windy road.
We're
That's-
just
that's a
big
bit
cut through
dicey.
For everybody. We're in the middle of
yeah,
everything.
that's definitely dicey.
I love doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so on the list of
Hilarious.
intersections with issues in town, in the master plan is the 27 and west light. The people can't see when it's too sunny out. And then there is this whole intersection that has to do with coming off of West down Harding and then going up, it's like the double forks.
Oh, yeah,
Because you've got the people coming up
yeah.
from town and going out,
That's tough when we go to the
stuff. Yeah, it's tough. And it's talking to Mo that one is actually that's his hot button. So, yeah.
Which
Yeah.
one's that?
The one, it's West Harding and North.
Yeah.
Because it's very confusing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very confusing as to where you're supposed to stop and where you're supposed to go. So, so then, they apparently, track the children and how they go home. So, I guess before I get into this, so really kind of like my takeaway from the whole sidewalk thing is that we have a huge problem with sidewalks kind of no matter where you live in town. And being able to get to any school in town is not a safe gamble for anyone. I mean, I live 0.4 miles from Memorial and Dale, and we never let our kids walk because it's too unsafe. So, that's just, the way it is. And I think it's a bigger problem. And I think that that's one of the big reasons why they didn't put sidewalks in this. They're too expensive and it's an issue.
I
So.
can't remember, do we need to pay for the buses or is that all part of?
Correct, there is not a bus
It's
fee, is that what
included
you
in your
mean?
Taxes.
There you
Right.
go.
You don't have to pay
They don't-
separately.
There's
for-
no
okay.
separate fee.
There's
We're
no
no
separate-
bus fee.
We're one of the few communities in
That
the
don't
state.
charge
that
for-
Mhm.
I remember that was discussed at one point, right? Whether
It
to
has been,
charge.
right?
Yeah.
I think it's a
Busing?
hot button discussion all the
Every
time.
year.
Yeah,
Every year we talk about it.
Yeah.
In school books, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
this says to me, bus rides on the 10-13. This is by day, huh?
this is by day, so this is,
347 out of 381, 91% of the kids are on the bus.
yes.
And this is,
Mhm,
91%.
It's huge, yeah, and so
Are you at Dale? Oh, you're at Dale.
this is on Dale, so, yeah, when I was speaking to Michael Francesca about it, he said town-wide, it's like 82% of the kids are on the buses.
townwide, but 91%.
But this is just
Yeah.
Dale Street, so
Does
you,
town line include high school?
yes,
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
there you go,
That's
that's why.
Because they're driving.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're all
exactly,
driving.
yeah.
They're all
Otherwise,
driving.
we'd be back to 90 plus, if you took
Mhm.
the high school on, I'm sure.
Yeah, yes, town-wide, it's 82%.
That's a
Pickups.
high number.
So, so this has got for you, at Dale Street, they were, the kids on the bus, pickups at the end of the day, how many kids were going to MAP. They put their walkers and bikers together as one number, and then that's the total of kids. You can tell that Friday, October 8th was before a long weekend, there was more kids absent than any other day. But interesting, most of them would normally have gone to MAP, it looks. But, and then it just, because, I put the weather in there, because it does clearly make a difference, you're not necessarily gonna walk if it rains, but I thought it was interesting because the amount of kids that walked and biked on Monday when it was raining is the same amount of kids that when it was 72 and sunny on Thursday, so maybe rain doesn't matter to a kid. It would have mattered to me. And so then at Wheelock, I did not connect with them today to find out what's happened this week, so this is last week. And so similar situation, vast majority of the kids are on the bus. The pickups are around in the 40s. Then they have more kids going to MAP, which I suppose makes sense, they're younger.
Yeah.
They do actually count the difference between walkers and bikers. So in total, on Monday, the 4th, they had 8 walkers and bikers, but they were split between the two. And again, it was the Friday before holiday, so more absences on Friday. Okay,
I mean, you wouldn't expect kids in second or third grade. to-
that's actually, yeah, and I've asked the question,
Right.
because, so my husband's an elementary PE teacher and he teaches K-5, and at his school, you're only allowed to ride your bike, once you're after 3rd grade and after you have passed, a test to get a license from him to ride your bike to school.
Oh, really?
So they do a bike
Good
safety unit and they hold a bike rodeo, and the kids they come to school with their bikes, and he has an obstacle course set up, and the kids have to pass it, and then they actually get a license. And then from that point on, they are allowed to ride their bike to school. So, it actually, I think, makes a lot of sense that you've got less here because you've got 2nd graders.
Yeah.
They probably aren't, and, you know, probably these kids that are riding their bike are a few 3rd graders that their parents feel like that it's okay to do that, so.
Are those neighborhood schools? In-
Needham is neighborhood schools. He actually works at the Sunita Williams one that everybody in town knows about, yeah, the big one on the left,
All right, you're like,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So this last slide is about the enrollment. So a lot of the questions are, so the enrollment is quote unquote gonna double. The one thing that we have to kind of take in mind is that people have siblings. And so when you are looking at the enrollment but you want to be able to understand how many more cars or are going to be traveling there, you really need to look at it from a family perspective.
Right.
So this is the enrollment as of September 28th. And so as of that date, you can see that Memorial is taking in 3 grades because it's got the pre-K, K, and 1 inside their numbers. So there's only 400 families out of the enrollment of 437. At Wheelock, there's 20 less families than enrollment, and at Dale, it's about almost 30. And so you can slice and dice this as many ways as you kind of want. The box in the middle is really just saying, so if you're a family and your only child or your only children go to Memorial, you're inside that 201. So those first 3 lines are people that only have children at one school, and then the other ones are combinations. So if you have a Memorial and a Dale, or if you've got the trifecta and you've got one at all 3, there's 26
This is
families
just
in that.
elementary, yeah,
Just elementary.
right.
So if we wanted to just take the argument point in time that you were going to combine Wheelock and Dale together today, if you did not consider sibling overlap, there would be 742 kids on that campus. But when you, on the very bottom line,
Okay.
and so, but if you take into account the fact that there's siblings, there's actually 113 less families. So I kind of think about it that way. So, and granted, now we already have seen that not as many people are coming to pick up or.
Yeah, I think that's,
So 629 at the end
yeah,
of the
but most
day.
of those kids are on the
with
bus.
But
Yeah.
you're right,
Yeah.
no, right, it just has to do with
Yeah.
families, so like, yeah. I mean, honestly, probably the only time you're gonna get to 629 was if somebody was kind of bad enough in their scheduling to schedule a pin night for all 4 grades at the same time. Which, anybody that would did that should probably not have a job. You wouldn't be able to do that. So, and then, as we have stated before, there is currently no plan to add another bus route. So yes, you're going to have these, if this happened today, there would be 742 kids over there rather than 398, but there wouldn't be any more buses because all of elementary kids bus together.
Bus together anyway.
They all bus together. There is no plan to add any more buses or extra bus routes.
Wait, so the buses right now, do they pick up the kids and make one stop to Dale and then
Mhm.
one stop to Wheelock? So it's like.
And Memorial, they all
Yeah.
bus
Oh,
together.
really?
Right.
Oh.
So a few
Huh.
years ago, they changed it because like when my kids were there,
Yeah, same
Wheelock
with
started 45 minutes later.
Yeah,
Like
same with
it
my
used to
kids.
only be Memorial and Dale that would bus together, and then Wheelock was the second run.
Right,
They wanted to try to condense things together to be able to allow teachers across schools to try to have some planning time. I think there was a lot of hope that when you condensed down to one bus run, that there would be a decent amount of cost savings to the town. There was not. The bus company's like, you have these buses for 4 hours, so we don't care if we had to do 2 runs or 1. So they put them all together. And another reason for that was like they were finding that the Wheelock route by itself, when the buses were dropping off at Wheelock, there was a very small amount of kids on it.
Right.
And so there was room to fit them all on the buses.
What's the difference in start times? Like.
It's only like, do you know, it's like 10, 15 minutes, I think. Start times.
About
for the
20.
3 schools.
So I know my daughter has a brutal time. trying
'Cause
to
I
get
know that,
across
like-
town.
It's like 15, 20
With
minutes.
Like they
kids.
added a morning recess period in
Oh,
order
just
to
a
try to line things up. So, but they're close enough that they are all picking up and dropping off at the same time together. So, which
So
is,
the sibling overlap at 629 would be families total at that campus, which is the increase from what's there today at 378. for Wheelock?
that's correct, yeah, so if you wanted to know the difference from today, you'd go 629 to 378.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And then if you did, so it's like 250,
Yeah,
So
and then 9% of that
90% of that's sitting on a bus.
Yes,
the way
or
I-
the 91 is on, percent is on the bus, and
Tell me what's wrong with my
90%.
logic, because the way I look at this is, I think Jeff said there's 74 teachers and admin, the whole Dale
Mhm.
population of teachers and admin.
Mhm.
There's 74 of them,
Mhm.
and they're gonna, obviously would have to go
They'll
to
have
home
class.
state, and they're gonna be there before the kids.
Right.
And then there's 392 kids. 392 kids,
Mhm.
90% are on the bus.
Mhm.
So that leaves 10%, about 39 kids.
Yeah.
A few of those are gonna walk,
Mhm.
call it 30.
Mhm.
All 30 of those get driven. You've got 74 plus 30, you've got 104 extra cars.
That's where it's
Right.
going. You've
That's-
got 23 additional families going to that
Right.
location, technically.
Yeah,
You don't
Yeah.
have that way.
and that's,
So that's
Plus the
not, that's, I mean,
Yeah.
when you think of 104 cars over over an hour's time frame, or 45 minutes, because 70 something are gonna arrive earlier, and the rest are gonna come in right before school begins. That, to me, I don't know, am I missing something? That's not much, given the traffic that comes down those streets anyways.
I mean, that's consistent with what the traffic study had, in it, like the numbers that you.
Yeah.
That's consistent, they did a similar, kind of
Yeah.
analysis.
The only thing that
I mean,
gets
I know
there-
you live
I mean,
there,
I
so
see it
you
every
could-
morning, the only
Mhm.
thing that gets you there is the additional families leaving after drop off. And it backs up from,
I mean, leaving after.
so they drop their kids off.
Oh, okay.
If you've got that 9%
in
or
and out.
whatever, yep.
In and out.
So they're all doing it about the same time, so you've got that Elm to South stop sign that does
That's
that
back
up.
up.
But it's
Yeah.
like, they must wait maybe 10 minutes to get out, like, it's
Do you
not,
think?
yeah,
Long?
yeah, five.
That's it, I don't know.
Like if you were adding those additional.
Yeah.
But you're lessening traffic, right, with the mitigation that's coming, that's opposite, but it still would be less trying to get through that
But
way.
the traffic report had around like
It
those
had-
same
It has
numbers.
like I think it was around 100 additional cars
Mhm.
Right,
Right.
from the teachers and like the.
Yeah. that's-
Right.
They had the numbers
Right,
on how
yeah.
many people drive and all that, so that was in there. Just as an aside, I showed you how little I had to do. I actually went down to, the Wheelock site and, for the afternoon pickup. And I watched to see how many cars came by to pick up their kids
Mhm.
in that big, that they all wait in that big circle. And I would say there was about between 20 and 25 at the peak, but then once all the kids got in, it was probably like 5 minutes and then.
Yeah, and then it's
they're
like
all
a
gone.
flurry of activity. and
yeah,
that's all-
yeah,
it's all done.
But
You told me that story and then I got obsessed yesterday and I went to Dale and Wheelock and I counted bikes. Well, I did, well, it was before I had actually gotten the numbers, because I asked whether or not they did that. I mean, I had talked to Mike and he had given me the percentage of the buses and everything, and I was like, who's actually really counting bikes? And then I was like, Steve counted cars. What's it gonna take to go count some bikes? And it was funny, and then I got these numbers late yesterday and today, and it was the same amount of bikes that I counted, so.
Count the wheel to buy by two, right?
Well, it's harder when they cross each other and then you're trying to, and you're trying to stay in your car and not look like the creepy lady that just pulled
That's what
up.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
One of you
anyway.
guys are gonna get picked up for that.
But-
you know.
I had my husband's car,
One of
not
these
my
people
car, so
bring
not
up
everybody
outside
knew it was
elementary
me.
school. Oh, I'm counting
What's that
bikes.
weird
Yeah,
guy?
here you are.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I'll also note that I think that based on their bike count, some of the bikers go to MAP. So. Not everybody was going home. So that was it. These are all my source
Great, yeah,
docs.
these are
Thank
so
you.
helpful
It's amazing
because you
stuff.
think that like two more grade, you're adding like double, like that, you know what I mean, in your mind, you just
Right.
think that. But then when you break it down, it's not as bad as, it's not as bad as, it's not double.
It's not.
It's not double.
Right.
It's not double. I mean, I think that what you really have to kind of keep in mind is that it would have been double if it was the pandemic and the buses weren't running. So I think, what happened last year, granted,
Yeah.
that not every kid was going every day.
Yeah.
But it's like, if every bus on the planet, disappeared,
Well,
Okay,
even-
here's other people with carpool, but,
Yeah.
but the reality is that these kids are on the bus.
Even to say, because, you know, everybody's perspective of what's significant is gonna vary.
Yeah.
But I think from my point of view, it indicates that it's manageable. Right, so I mean, it's not a number that's like overwhelming, it's, oh, what are we gonna do? It's, you know, that if you live on Elm Street, or if you live on one of these side streets, or one of these cut throughs, or what have you. It's gonna be a big deal to you, but, and not to diminish that, but the fact is that. There are ways to help mitigate this, whether it's starting times in schools and different things like that, you know, over the course of, with the resources, it's a manageable problem. You know, not gonna be all, it's not gonna resolve everything, but, you know.
What I do when I permit projects that have like a big traffic impact, because like, you know, it's, you see all these reports, but then it's all, you are skeptical too. You're like, can I really believe these numbers, and is the mitigation really gonna work? Is that, you know, when they go through the permitting process, the planning board can put a condition in like the site plan decision saying 12 months or after stabilization, maybe like a full year, we'll look at the mitigation and see how, if the assumptions from the traffic report are true, and if the mitigation works. And if it doesn't, then we'll go back and reassess and figure out like another plan, so that at least the people that have real concerns, those people that live on Elm Street, can feel comfort that, all right, we'll give it a year, you know, the building will stabilize, and then we'll see, is it as bad, are the assumptions made in the traffic report true, or are they worse? And if they're worse, then the town can go back and reassess and then figure out other mitigation.
And I think
measures.
And actually, actually, in
it's-
the open meeting on the June 13th, Chief Gadet said exactly that.
That's
That-
good.
That we'll
Yeah, we'll
assess
look
it,
at.
we're gonna put it in, what we put in place, we will assess it over that period of
Yeah,
time,
to
and we can
confirm.
adjust.
Yeah, we'll-
So she said
We'll have
exactly
time
what you
to-
just pointed out.
Yeah.
Cause it is, you know, for, you know, you can see, just like you said, Bob, like the people that live on Elm Street, they'll have that direct impact, you know, and it, I'm sure they're not happy with it. So then, you know, we're putting these you know, the SBC is putting the mitigations in place, and let's see if it works. And then if it doesn't, at least they'll, you know, they can then voice their opinion, and new mitigation measures can be implemented.
Yeah, one of the points that was made by the school building committee is that the drop off, the site at Wheelock allows for off-street
Yes,
drop off. So it's, you know, there's a significant amount of
turn.
traffic. If you're talking about 25 cars, I think that is accommodated in the.
Oh, more than that, I mean, that only went like halfway through the, yeah, there's that big loop, and it was only like maybe a third or half. You know,
Right.
covered with those cars.
And so it's off of Elm Street then, because then they come back. They're not gonna diminish.
Okay.
Good job, nice work.
yeah.
All right. See, we're already past my 9 o'clock, but I didn't
You
want it.
guys are really busy
Yeah,
during the
but-
wedding, huh? Jeez,
I know, yeah, we were busy. Yeah, you
You were dancing
went off
around.
and
Life and then.
was
you guys
father of
were
the bride
out
and
and
all of
bikes and-
that.
Good stuff.
So I guess the question is there anything else I mean, I feel like both of those presentations kind of pull in a lot of the different things that we had talked about. I mean, obviously water was one we haven't talked about yet, but we just did that big presentation. Like, is there anything else that people looked into or wanted to kind of highlight again, or?
The only question I was gonna ask, did you happen to capture the square footage that would be used in Dale by person work? What that square footage is?
It was like 20.
Yeah, I thought
Okay.
24.
Yeah, 24, it's like 3 times the current
It's
space.
definitely more than what we had.
Yes.
Yeah.
They said
yeah,
3
in
times the current
20s.
space,
So-
which is
It's
8,000 and
basically
24,000.
It's the cafeteria, you know, the 62
This-
piece, and then the gym, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So the older feasibility that was done by Parks and Rec, but I went back to look at the
Mhm.
Parks and Rec. I know Amanda had it dropped.
Yeah.
Or something else.
Yeah.
So she can't back me up at the moment, but when I was looking at their overall plan and what they're looking to accomplish in the proposed building, that they were looking at modeling that from, and it had costs included in there, and I think their plan was like 13 million,
Mhm.
which didn't include acquisition
Mhm.
land or anything like that either, so. But to expand into their program and where the opportunities were, which we heard from them directly, was like the adults, community ed stuff,
Mhm.
things for the older students, try to capture more of the Dale and middle school and high school kids. I went through and added up all of the space that was proposed in there, and then it was in the pricing, but their number was at 39,500 square feet, so.
That was what they proposed in the feasibility study.
Yes, yeah, so that's what I was curious about, okay, what does Dale get them and afford them for expansion and program based
Right.
on the
Yeah.
performance they put together for revenue. So
They said they're gonna go from 8,500 to 19,400.
And then you had to add.
Jim,
and then you had to
Jim,
add-
Jim.
Jim is
Then the gym
24,000,
was-
then Jim is 24.
I think that's
Right.
it.
And it doesn't use up the whole building, so I think that,
Yeah.
because what they were saying was that they would put them in that space first,
Day one.
day one, and either mothball the rest, or maybe somebody else wants to use the rest, so whether, like, whether or not youth outreach goes there, or
Yeah, I
whether
mean,
or
there's
not.
available space more than that if they.
the
need it.
majority of the space from the feasibility study was gym space.
Yeah,
Right,
Parks and Rec though, so you're
yeah.
yeah,
probably doing something.
But
Yeah.
I mean, they want to do all sorts of programming, you know,
Right.
for adults and, I mean, I don't know
For
what.
the older
It
kids.
sounds like he's got all these great.
they've got a
ideas.
lot of ideas,
Yeah.
they just don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, so this, I mean, certainly, a huge improvement in space.
I mean, my understanding, some of that initial plan, they wanted to do like an indoor track and I mean, it was.
The initial plan had,
elaborate.
That was
It's
like
four cakes.
an additional
Yeah.
8 million to do that
Okay.
north
oh yeah, it was,
Okay.
it was
So
a
if
much
you didn't do that,
bigger.
It was a
That
39,000
was,
square
okay,
feet,
okay,
and,
okay.
yeah.
Well, the other thing that I don't think is, because the sites that they talk about in there is either Dale, if it's available, or up on Hospital Hill.
Mhm.
But what you have to remember about the Hospital Hill site is that there are no utilities there,
Yeah, so you have all that infrastructure.
and so the side that they're talking about is the top of the sledding hill.
Mhm.
There's literally no utilities there, so
Plus
the
the
infrastructure,
proximity to Hinkley was really big. for
Yeah,
them,
that's
And
what I
that's like
think
one of my
that
main
is.
takeaways
Yeah.
too, was
yeah,
that's pretty important for them.
yeah, because
Yeah, they
they
need to
walk
be
the kids
downtown.
there every day,
Plus you have
summer.
high school kids that are
Yeah.
employed, they're getting
Yeah.
there somehow, so.
Yeah,
yeah.
so your point is that 16 million was for 30, how much square feet?
39,500, and it was 13 million and not 20, I think it was 2017, that feasibility.
Right, so it's gonna be more expensive.
Yeah, it could go up from there.
So what was the 16 million for?
I think the 16 million was an average of a couple of things, so it was like, they had the 13 million one, and then I think that they had. Because there was two different feasibility studies that was done, there was the first one that Park and Rec just did on their own, and then there was the
And
one
they
that
had
was.
$18 million.
It was an $18 million building in something, and there was a $13 million building in one, and so, to be honest, I'm not
They
sure
just
who exactly
averaged it.
decided, but yeah, they basically put something in the middle.
But it is in the schedule, and that's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, okay, I know that did you wanna, like, or no,
Yeah.
think you're good? Okay.
We covered the town plan
Yeah.
I was
on
gonna
there.
say, yeah, I know, I kind of
There's-
hijacked your town plan into.
That's
my-
okay, but there was,
Yeah,
we did
that's
receive questions, just through the Warrant Committee email with the town planning, but the town plan, I mean, I go back to this, it supported a new school, a new school. so-
Yeah, and it supports the, the PASS Center, the Park and Rec,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I feel like it's being accomplished.
Yeah,
Yeah, that little window you had there with the list of the 6 items was pretty, the school, the fab,
mhm,
the hospital, it just.
yeah, yeah, they're good, they're very, full of information, all that stuff, so it's been an educational process, to say the least, so,
It's got these,
Did you want to go? over
yes,
that?
I do wanna go over that.
I don't have the latest one, I didn't print it out, but I know what it is.
Yeah, here,
I think it'll be good. Take a quick input on that.
yeah, exactly, all right, so let me try to do this again. So this is an attempt to take what Tim Bonifati said about what the process is and put it into a slide. I will tell you, it is a very frustrating PowerPoint slide. Because I won't get into it, but so, what we've kind of gone back and forth on this is trying to get an understanding of what exactly is gonna happen over the next few weeks in the future of that. So, do you want to try to explain it, Ed, or do you want me to try to explain?
Well, start with the green. If it passes, that's pretty easy. It's yes on both votes, both votes being the town meeting and the ballot. Then the school, the process begins and it's finished in 2024. And then you start to look at the potential Dale reuse, and that's a whole separate discussion. So that's a yes on both counts. Now, if you have a no, and I'll go to the red, the top of the red pyramid there, no on both votes or just one. And the footnote that I have that we just added up there is, obviously you need 2/3 vote at the town meeting and greater than 50% at the ballot. Maybe you should put 50.1.
I thought about that.
50.1.
It could be 50.0001.
Whatever, yeah.
50 plus one, how's that?
Yeah.
50% plus one. Yeah,
So this is
Pretty
where it
good.
got confusing
Yeah.
because it was
2/3 plus one.
yeah, yes. Yeah.
So now you have all these permutations that happen if one fails and one the other passes, et cetera. So if you go to the left-hand one, the town decides to re-vote on substantially the same project within 120 days. All right, so if you get a yes or a no on one of those two votes. And then you go down and you say, okay, if it's a yes vote, then you go back, you can proceed with the schools. If it's a no vote, no on the re-vote, then the town decides what it wants to do. To either pursue a new school or what have you, go to those two things. But let's go back up to the other one. If on the second level down, the town decides not to revote on substantially the same project at the same site within 120 days, you go right down and you say, town decides if it wants to still pursue a new school. And then you have that process. You either go through the MSBA process or you just do, the town does it by itself. You go through the MSBA process, of course, you get state reimbursement. If you don't, you do it yourself and you pay for it all yourself. So you give up the 19 million. Next statement on, if you were gonna do that, if you're gonna go the MSBA process and try to do this project at Dale or some other place, you have a new statement of interest and the next submittal date is April 22. And then you proceed from there. And then you wait to be approved and you don't know what's gonna happen. But when you think about it, if you started in April and it takes as long as this timeline has taken in the past, it'd be about 4 years before you're at the point where we are right now, before you decide where am I gonna put the school. And then you have the construction after that. So you're looking at 7 years, 7 years out with the cost increases and the interest rates and all that to deal with. So if the town votes, you go the other route, the town does it by itself, obviously it's gonna cost more. You have to start that feasibility study again, and eventually a new project. And the feasibility is gonna be 1 to 2 years, design and construction. Phase is 3 years, and the timeline out here is just to let everyone know, this is
That's
the
our current
process.
timeline.
That's the process that you have to go through, and it's several years before the school will be built again.
And that timeline is actually on the,
More than
it's on the
7 years.
SBC website, under timeline. And it was
Yeah.
simple.
That's great.
So from 17 to
Very
24.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. It's something that I can put in the email, so.
Yeah. I hadn't used PowerPoint in a long time and I became an expert again in the last week.
Well, I was starting to do this thing with bullets, and then I saw what you did, and I said, well, yours is much better. Yeah, bullets.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's like a 7-year timeline.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what it
it's a
is.
long time.
I mean, even.
If you got in.
But yeah, that's only if you got in, right?
That's
So
if
it's
you
like,
get in,
we
right.
started
Because
when, back in 2008?
we had 3 submittals.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when was the first one, 2008,
Well,
right?
one was 12.
12,
Was it 12,
12,
16 and 17?
12, 16.
12,
12 is what I.
yeah, I think it's 12.
12,
Yeah, so
16 and
that's-
17, or, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's just
So the best case scenario is you get in 2 years after
Yeah.
you submit your
Right,
statement of interest.
Well, let's
Best case.
just play devil's advocate. Let's say that we hit the lottery and that
then we get back in.
And then
that
right
in
away.
December of 2022,
Mhm.
we get back in.
Yeah,
It's still
Still take you 6 years.
gonna take you.
I mean,
Yeah,
Five,
so
six
like
years
3 to
out.
5 years out,
I mean, that and, you
and the
know,
cost of inflation, interest rates.
Compound, I just, compound 5% over, 6 years. And
And what are you evaluating? You know,
You know, that's the thing is, you probably, if it was, the process worked the same way it did, you'd probably come down to the same 2 locations. Wheelock and Dale. You'd be back at some Groundhog Day. Seriously, you'd probably, and unless something else came up in that, you'd still be at these 2
Yeah.
potential sites,
Mhm.
the same discussion. And would have the same debates all over again.
Well, yeah, I think in the course of the conversations and the meetings that they conducted, it's not just about Dale or Wheelock.
Mhm.
There are other issues that don't go away with a no vote, whether it's the cost, whether I don't want to pay any more taxes. I mean, there's a lot of valid concepts that people will have, not to vote, that would carry over to
right.
Mhm.
a revote, So if it's not just, well, if it's this, it's gonna be that, to your point.
Yeah. Well, we were talking the other day, and I said, there's really only 2 things that everybody agrees with. We need a new school, and we don't want to pay for it.
That's fair.
That's really good.
You know, that's.
So let's meet somewhere in the middle.
Oh, man, that's good. Cool, all right, so, to kind of go back to your suggestion before, I think it's a good idea to put this slide and the 2 presentations up on the website. As for the Q&A, I think you had mentioned last time, it probably makes sense to put the Q&A up. I mean, what do people think about that? I mean, the Q&A is already, it's already out there, it's already attached to our
Yeah.
meeting materials,
Yeah.
Right.
so we can.
I think it's a good.
I think it's a great tool. I think it's a great, reference for
Yeah,
folks.
resource.
Either at the warrant, the warrant hearing or otherwise, but it's a good summary of all the work that has been put in.
Mhm.
I'd certainly be in favor of putting it in.
Okay, and then there was one other doc that, I updated that I'm gonna have, refreshed, and I honestly can't remember if I sent it to you guys. I went through when Steve was working on this, I kind of reconciled the Dale maintenance plan to the original 2017 document, against what Jeff and Mike had presented, and found a couple of discrepancies. So Mike LaFrancesca and I had kind of made those changes, and they were, 3 of them were actually new things that had gotten added to the list since 2017, because they had to replace, I think, the curtain, and they replaced the gutter. So there's a few new things that were on there. There's actually a couple things that dropped off. When I looked at it, I go, well, why isn't, there was like a $50,000 electrical engineering study that wasn't on Mike's list anymore. And he said, he goes, well, actually, that ended up getting done in the feasibility study, so they were able to take it off the plan, because it was part of the study that they did when they were gonna do an ad rental option. So there's just a couple of changes, and I basically added a note as to, so if somebody was trying to look at the 2017 document that we have up and looking at this and trying to figure out the differences, so I just added a list basically of the 4 or 5 things that changed. So I would like to swap out the document that's up on the website that Mike and Jeff brought to that, and put the updated one that shows
Yeah.
the 2 changes.
Yeah, and just so, and probably doesn't need to be said, but I just want to make sure I say it, that, a lot of this work reflects best efforts to address people's concerns, right? We're not making judgments on, and, it's trying to be as attentive we can to all the people in town who are asking the questions, right? So, but I also want to say that from my perspective, it reflects all of us. It's the warrant committee's response, not just the author, it's not just one person's opinion, because we did go through it, we have had a chance to read it, so I think it's important that we reflect in where we are as a committee. That fair? So, because some people think,
I agree.
who are you saying?
I mean, if people are okay with it, I'd like to probably entertain a motion to accept that we're all okay with the Q&A before we put it out.
Yeah.
We good with doing that?
So do we just vote?
Yeah, well, let's actually vote. Okay, I'll entertain a motion in order to accept the Q&A as our
So moved.
answers. Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Okay, so Newton,
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes,
I'm a yes, and Amanda had to hop off, so 8 vote. Okay, and then we should probably vote to put the other documents that we talked, put up on the website, just because we've been doing that, so might as well do that. So I think it'll also, I guess it'll be an entertaining motion, basically to put up the documents that we went through tonight. So it'll be the 3 PowerPoint presentations. And then the swap out of the deal reuse.
and this,
Yes,
That's one.
So
that
moved.
was one of my 3.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, and so,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
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 yes,
okay, and then the one other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly before we head out is about the next couple of meetings. So I had a discussion, days are pushing together yesterday with Christine and Scott, and we talked a little bit about the warrant hearing that will be on the 26th. Okay. Yeah. How do I zoom again? Hold on. I'm getting better at this, but. Okay, so for the warrant hearing, so as I had mentioned before, Scott is gonna come, and so I confirmed with that, and so Scott is actually gonna be presenting to the selectmen next Tuesday, what the plan will be for town meeting, and so he will review that again on the 26th. So anybody that wants to know the decisions that he's made, it will be on next Tuesday. He's still refining a lot of those things, and I think he still is having meetings with people up through Monday. So that will be talked about at the selectmen meeting on Tuesday. He and I talked a little bit about, I feel like people need to know who we are a little bit, because I feel like a lot of people have watched us and, people, I think Scott generally likes to pick people that are kind of a cross section of different people in town. So he actually suggested that he would introduce us at the warrant hearing and just talk a little bit about why he picks people in general for the warrant committee. And so just kind of talk about that thought process he goes through. And that saves all of us from having to bother to introduce ourselves. So I think he's gonna talk about that more in general.
Did he agree to moderate our meeting?
Yeah, right, exactly. I don't know if he's gonna run back out the door or what, so. So this next is kind of, I would love your guys' thoughts on how to make it work. And so as we started to talk about last week, I don't think we should be taking questions. I feel like the time for questions is kind of past. I'm 99% sure the SBC is doing their final form 2 nights later.
28th.
So I think that we should just, anybody that comes up with a question, we should toss them
That's the right
to that
one.
meeting
That's the right one.
for that.
yeah, is that going to, yes, all right, so they're gonna remake it, and we'll be present, that's just, I mean, if we're tossing the questions out for a couple of days, you're gonna let them answer the question.
I'm gonna let the SBC
Yeah,
answer the
okay.
question.
Yeah,
Well,
all right.
you're gonna set.
I'm gonna say up front
Set
that-
the table by saying
No
you can
questions.
comment, but it's not a question.
Right, this is
Right.
people's opportunity to give us their opinions and their thoughts about what is the most important thing to them, not to ask us questions, because I feel like we're kind of past that. Because, I mean, we have a 75-page
Yeah.
Q&A, people have had an
You can-
opportunity to ask their questions.
Kind of a dollar to a dime, people are gonna bump and still ask a question.
They will, but
So
it's fine.
maybe we'll
They
just say,
might not
refer
get
to the,
SBC
document.
or.
right, we can say
document.
we've published a Q&A
Right.
and if you
It's
still
in
have a
there.
lingering question, there is a public forum on Thursday.
all right.
I think that is
Yeah,
gonna be,
I think that's-
I think that's just our answer. We could probably put it up on a slide that's behind us.
It's a reminder.
As a reminder.
I mean, it's more an opportunity for them to be heard about what they,
Right,
what they want people to know and, you
Mhm.
know, maybe how they're gonna vote or how they, you know,
Yeah.
what their thoughts processes.
yeah.
With time limits.
With time limits, well, that's my next thing. So I kind of have a priority order and a time limit, so I don't know what you guys think about that. I mean, because there are certain folks in town that were part of a constituent group that we had those first 5 conversations with.
Right.
So we've already heard from some people, and they had a lot of time with us, you know. Our meetings have ranged anywhere between an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. And so anybody that came to one of those, we've already heard probably the vast majority of what they want to say. And so I feel like this is an opportunity for people that didn't have an opportunity yet. So I think I would like to invite people that did not come to one of those to talk first. And then after all of those people are done, then the people that were at one before can talk. I'm not really sure about the time limit. I guess what I kind of landed on here, and I'd love your guys' opinion, because I have a hard time gauging how long it takes. I was thinking that if no longer than 3 minutes, but at 2 minutes, like I raise my hand or something like that, so that they know they've got 1 minute left, like some kind of like a 2-minute warning, and then they can wrap up their thought, and then it's 3 minutes.
We also stagger maybe like those people that haven't had an opportunity yet to say anything, depending on volume, but maybe give them a little more time than the second here that have already spoken like 2 minutes.
I'm fine with that too. I mean,
That's good.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
like maybe those people get 5 minutes or something like
Question
that.
is, how are we gonna,
Yeah.
how are we gonna police the people who have come before us? We have to have like I mean, there's been a lot of people who, when you think about it, who have come before us. And I'm not sure I remember them all.
I think I do.
Do you reckon? Okay, good. All right. As long as you know.
I think I've rewatched all of the videos
Like all
like
those
2 or 3
teachers, you have
times.
all their, you know, all the teachers and their names.
I think, well, we
Kind of
have,
rely on a bit of their honesty.
I think, yeah, there's gonna be a little bit of honesty. I mean,
System.
I did for the teacher one, I did go back through there and I paused it, and every single teacher's name was in the
Oh, it's in our
minutes.
minutes. That's right.
They were all in the minutes, and I think we captured everybody in all of the minutes, so we have those lists, so we just grab those from the minutes and have a list in front of us, and we're like, this
Yeah,
is
maybe
we've
you
seen you
should-
before.
Maybe you should clarify by saying anyone whose name is in our minutes. is in
Right.
this
Yeah, there
group.
you go.
Easy
Yeah.
way to do it.
That's
Right.
easier.
That's it,
a
that's
better
it.
way
We
to
can
That-
know who
that is
you are
just
and
right
we do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
We have your name right here.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally cool with somebody who hasn't talked before having more.
I think it's a
Yeah,
good
that's a
idea.
good
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we can gauge a little bit by how many people show
That's
up.
what I was thinking too. We could
Right.
Decide that.
Yeah,
If we all have-
flexible, yeah, yeah.
Right, I mean, we can
Yeah.
be flexible, I mean,
Yeah.
there have been
3
times
weeks.
that, there was a time this spring when we were doing that, we did a warrant meeting and we had, when we were doing, it was that one that we did about the citizens petition, and I told everybody they had 10 minutes to do a presentation. But I let people finish, I'm not gonna cut you off,
Yeah,
but
but
I'd
it's
like
just
you to
trying
have a
keep it-
guide.
Keep it concise.
You know?
And, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I'm good with that. And then I guess the question is, so then if, once every single person in this room has been allowed to talk, we want people to talk the second time? Or just say you get one shot?
Right, but I think it's not is it an opportunity to repeat what they've already told us, or is it to actually?
Yeah.
Should be something.
It should be something new.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's again, one of the guidelines, if you want to get new input that it's not.
It's kind of like Scott has said before at a town meeting, like, when once it's gone on for a while, he's like, if you have a new opinion,
Right, he doesn't
Say-
let people talk about the same thing
Yes,
over
over
and
and over
over.
again.
Yeah, he should
And
do
you
that,
can,
yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can be in a position, I think, or one of us, you know, to say, that's in the, like we do here.
Yeah, we discussed
That's
that
on the
already.
webpage,
Yeah,
that's
we
in the
discussed it.
document.
And I don't think we should be afraid to do that. And I also do want to say something at the beginning about proper behavior, like
Mhm.
talking under people's breath and saying things when somebody else is talking is just quite frankly rude. You know, and I think that you sit quietly until it's your turn. And I'm not below, this is gonna be in the public safety building, I'm not below having somebody removed if it gets out of hand. I don't think, I'd like to think nobody's gonna do that, but who knows?
Where's it gonna be?
It's actually gonna be in the public safety building in the training room. So here's hoping 100 people.
The
don't show
first
up.
floor.
It's the big room on the first
Training room.
floor.
On
The first floor
Is
is
that
where
where we
we-
met with Dale?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
I think there's a conflict
Yeah.
over at the high school,
Okay.
but,
Yeah.
Is
So-
this gonna be totally in person or hybrid? If there's a member of the public that wanted to speak.
I think
that
if
was
people
hybrid.
want, I think if people want to speak,
Right.
they're hybrid, I think that that's okay. We're just hit the little loud talk button.
Yeah.
I'm okay with
So
that.
just acknowledge
Sure, they
it's-
can
we're
control
good
the
the
minutes
hour
that way,
wheel.
too.
Well, right, yeah, you can control the minutes and toss them back up.
Mute that.
Yes, you can mute
Time's
them,
up.
exactly. Yeah, I guess I kind of envision that it's hybrid. And then we just kind of manage that. I mean, it'll make the time management more important because we're gonna get more people. We're gonna get more people. But we may want to make like a game time decision, and see how that goes. Yeah. So that's warning. Anybody else have anything else about that one? All right, so,
Can you circulate that to us if you haven't already done that?
yes, absolutely, I can do that. And so the vote meeting, it's kind of funny because it's like, on one hand, we haven't really deliberated a lot, like we've been only talking about facts, none of us have talked about our opinions yet. So I feel like this is the meeting, if people want to talk about their opinions, they can. I mean, it feels kind of silly to just walk in, make a motion and vote. I feel like we need to have a discussion of some kind. I think at one point, you know, I was kind of envisioning that we kind of like go around and everybody talks, but I mean, say what you want to say, like,
Well, yeah,
you know, like.
that's on the second.
That's on the second. I think that's the first opportunity we're gonna have to talk about our opinions.
I like the idea of everybody expressing
Their
their
opinion.
opinion, and I think in a time frame, 5 minutes, 7
Well, I
minutes.
mean,
Just to-
well, there's
And then
9 of
from which
us.
you can have dialogue, I mean, that's
Right.
45 minutes. It's
Well, I was
5
gonna
minutes.
say, there's 9 of us. If everybody talks for 10 minutes, we're here for an hour and a half. I know, but nobody, I don't think is gonna do that. But I do think that we all should, you know, be able to have our time to say either what was important to you, what shaped your opinion,
Yeah.
whatever you want, feel like you wanna talk about, but, yeah. And then we'll just, when we feel like we're done, we'll just vote.
But how about if you did something along that line?
Which.
What was?
Yeah, like
what was
those
your
are my
opinion, you know, what was
suggestions.
important to you? How
Yeah.
did it shape your opinion? I mean,
Yeah.
and then 5 minutes, and then you get 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you have a discussion for 30 minutes, and then you vote, and you get an hour and a half. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with the structure, because I think it helps us all, and I think it's important from the public perspective.
Yeah,
I mean, if people disagree or agree, it should be out there in the open. We've done everything else in the open.
yeah.
And we'll have a warrant article, kind of a minor point, but we'll have the article.
In theory, we'll have an article, yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Every time I ask, they say I'm working on that. I'm not
We're
really
voting
sure
in
what's
advance of getting the language. You have reserved voting in other warrants. I haven't seen the actual language. Yeah.
We'll make sure we have that. Well, they will, because they will call the town meeting by then,
Thank
obviously,
you.
so.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for coming for all you do, Tim.
And so,
Well, and there's
Yeah.
also a review of the warrant, right? The warrant committee's analysis.
yeah, and because we're gonna.
TBD.
Yeah, well, I mean, Right, I mean, we have to do a report and we may have to do 2 reports, you know, it's kind of like, it's one of those things that. Clearly you end up with a majority report and then by rule, if 3 of us voted against it, you have to have a minority report. I remember like,
But I think you're also allowed, like,
but
there's some discretion. if one
there's
person-
discretion and, you know. I was the one that a couple years at a special town meeting was really annoyed that we were having a special town meeting and I voted no on principle on every single one. And I wanted to do a minority report and Mike Pastore made me go down to the floor to give it because he didn't want me to give it at the table. And I did. And
Small chair for you.
yes, and but in
I
this
thought
case-
this is covered in the bylaw,
it is, so in the bylaws, it says that if we have 3, we have to.
but then it also
If it's
says-
under 3, it is optional.
Yeah.
And there's discretion involved there. And so I guess my opinion is even if there's only 1 or 2 of us, I think we should have it.
Sure. I agree.
Yeah, I think it, yeah.
I think, you know, I think we've done a lot of work and I don't think that we should say if only 1 or 2 of us
Right.
feel differently than,
It's not unanimous.
right. And I think
that's
that,
what
I
Let the
think we
minority
should have it.
voice speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it would actually be codified with the majority opinion? And then-
so there would be
And
2
then-
different rules, so I feel like it's been a while since
Yeah,
we've
I
had a majority and minority report.
Blue table.
Hmm?
The blue table.
Oh, yeah, the blue tables, we have had a few, I know. So actually, this
Right.
gets into the town meeting thing, so. When I was talking to Scott and Christine, like the way that it normally happens is when we do the reports, like we write the report. And then someone sits in their chair and they read it. And then the minority report, they would just sit in their chair and they read it and they go on. I think we're still gonna do that. But what Scott is offering up, if we so chose to have a slide up behind us, if we thought that it would be good to have a graphic projected, since we might be paying a whole bunch of money to a AV consultant to make sure this thing works and all of the different things that if we want to use the technology that's there.
Yeah.
If it makes sense in the report to have a slide that has the bullet points or whatever that has to do with the report, whatever we would want it to be, we could do
I think
that.
that's a good idea.
Basically, it's the presentation.
It is, except for we wouldn't actually get up and give a presentation. I think it's like kind of like a 1 slide for graphic.
But
So.
we're limited to 1 slide.
Just like you did.
I haven't
just
asked
like
that
you did
question.
here,
That's
the-
what it
the
felt like to
boxes
me.
and the arrows and the things and the.
You know, I think there's been so much work done. That I think we have to tell the town, as I said before, most of the people in town still really haven't followed this at all. And I tell you, they don't know whether they think, a lot of people still think we're voting Dale and Wheelock. A lot of people have paid no attention to what has been done here. And I think that you know, there should be some type of, more than maybe just a slide, is, you know, our thoughts, our process. And maybe we, as we talk on the 2nd about,
Well, I think
What
that's
was
gonna be
it
the second,
convinced each
the
of
second
us?
half of our meeting on the 2nd is gonna be how are we gonna do this, who's gonna talk and who's gonna write it? You know, like, we're gonna have 5 days to get that done. Depending on that, so that's gonna be kind of part 2.
A visual or visuals that support the report.
this is how we
Mhm.
came to
Yeah,
this
our
conclusion.
process. Yeah, our
Yeah.
process.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Yeah, because actually, now that you say that, Scott had also mentioned that he thought it would be good for us to go through what our process has been.
Right.
And I think, and so we went back and forth a little bit about, and I had said, well, because at a typical town meeting, we would have a welcome warrant thing that we would say. I don't think that they think that would happen at the special town meeting. I guess it doesn't typically happen at the special town meeting. So I think he was trying to decide whether or not we do that there or whether or not we say something at the warrant hearing in the beginning about our process.
And there's
And do
nothing going out in the mail, like.
That's
Oh,
debatable,
that's still-
because I think there is at least some selectmen that would like something to go out in the mail. It's very tight though, because I mean, they're gonna call it 2
Would we
weeks
be asked
before.
to
Yeah.
put anything in writing on that?
Well, no, because we won't have voted yet.
I'd like to see Rutland Mail, that,
Yeah, yeah,
seriously.
We could.
Yeah.
That could be in the hometown weekly, it would, I mean, no
Yeah.
matter what people thought, whether they're for or
Yeah.
where it is, if they see this, they'll say, wow, this is the consequence of my
Yeah.
vote.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have toyed with the idea, which I suppose we could do, because we have a week off, whether or not, and not necessarily a letter to the editor thing, but just maybe just something about the process, and this is the hearing or whatever, like something just straight up process. We could do that, and then you could put something like that if we wanted to. I don't know, I mean, I actually had gotten approached by Medfield TV to do one of their updates on what we're doing. And I'll admit, I didn't respond. I asked Christine about it and she was like, I'm not sure, let me think about it. And then we both never did anything about it, because it's weird, because it's like, on one hand, our committee is just supposed to be impartially doing all these things, so we're not necessarily supposed to be doing PR for one thing or the other, and I think she didn't want it to be seen that way, but on the flip side, I feel like we've gone through a huge process that is not something normal that this committee does, and I feel like there's an awareness that needs to happen for that,
Well,
so,
the objective was to inform people,
right,
and with the end result that people would vote.
yeah,
So it's
On the
not,
facts, on the
right,
facts.
yeah,
to give them information and get them, to your observation, engaged.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, as your chart shows, it has significant consequences both ways.
yeah.
It will be significantly expensive, or it will be prohibitively expensive.
Now, do you expect, that at the annual town meeting, that questions will be directed from the floor to the warrant committee?
They usually aren't.
They usually aren't until you had, but there were a couple in the spring, you know.
That's a good
They
point.
It's usually to the, whatever the
It
petition.
normally is gonna go to the SBC,
Yeah.
so I would say,
Mike, will we get
I wouldn't-
Different situations where.
they're not prohibited from
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
somebody
okay.
could go up there and ask a question, and then you potentially have to answer it.
I remember
there are a
Joanna
couple- Yeah,
might
exactly.
have had a hospital.
Right, yeah, she
That was a
did,
huge
I was gonna make that,
presentation.
yeah, observation.
Christine sometimes jumps in,
yeah.
maybe a selectman jumps in from time to
Mhm.
time.
Yeah, but the primary, Mike will probably be handling,
But Joanna did,
90% of them.
you're absolutely right.
and you might have, we might have to jump in on one or two,
Right,
yeah.
But
Right.
I'm just, I guess, recognizing that there's sort of an awareness in the community about, this committee and what our role was, and maybe that we're viewed as independent, and objective.
mhm.
I'd be happy to put a slide together that
People might
detailed
want,
our process,
yeah,
because it would be.
people might want to know that, and they might want to ask questions because of that. It's sort of my view. that
Yeah,
Maybe.
do you wanna do that from the beach in Florida next week? Since it happens
Oh,
Wednesday?
yeah.
Uh-huh. She has the
You have
right
to write that
idea,
in.
she's actually going on a
Yes.
vacation, not just on the
nice.
warrant,
We're not Destin.
Destin, oh, yeah.
But I will have fun with it, so.
you know.
It's nice down there.
But just one high level. like,
No, I think that that's
objective
good.
Groups we met with, and then maybe a reference to resources that
Mhm.
came out of those meetings.
Well, I mean, that's the
site.
other thing too, that I was thinking about, like, if we did that, even if we just had the one sheet and it references to tell people to go to the website, like, this is where everything is. I mean, because that is part of the
Yeah.
thing. It's like, you're not reaching the people that are at home, not on Facebook or on the
Yeah.
website, whatever, like, they need something that says, oh, there's information here,
Right.
where can I go get it?
Yeah, just some kind of reference to that.
Mhm.
At least here's like key topics and
Right.
categories evaluated.
I mean, I'm sure that at a minimum, if they are actually gonna do a mailing in town, even though we haven't voted, I would think that they would be very open for us, including something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like what, this is what.
In
we're
the
doing.
Process.
In the
yeah.
mailing,
Interesting.
Yes.
I thought that it would be great, after your original idea, to present that at the hearing,
Mhm.
what our original objective has been.
I think we should do that
And
at
our
the hearing.
process
I
that
think
we've
that's a
gone
good
through and the compilation of information that's out on the website, you know, all that sort of stuff is very valuable.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we should do that too, because we can do that at the beginning.
And I really like the idea of you going on MTV and restating all
Doing
that.
them update.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Doing them update.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so, yeah, so we could do that, yeah, I'm
check
I'm not gonna say no, if you would like to put it together. That works for me. Okay, so I don't think we actually. You're taking notes, did we actually do the motion to put the stuff up on the website? or
Yes, we did.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
All
got
right.
it all.
I know, this is the longest meeting I've ever gone over, but I think it was good. So, does anybody have anything else? All right, I know, it wasn't
Good.
too bad, so, all right, well then, would you like to make your motion?
A motion to adjourn?
All right, okay, so Newton.
Yes.
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 Yes, let's go home.
Great
All
work,
right.
everyone. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
How'd you like to be the guy when he says, hi, I'm Steve Callahan, I'm just here to